a bustling medieval town with plenty of adventurers walking the streets. The main character's name is Radha Dixon. The black-haired young man is a member of a C-rank guild called Black Wolves. The hero left the royal capital at the age of 25 and moved to another city to become an adventurer. Now he is 30 years old and has been sitting at rank F for 5 years. A merchant offered to buy the young man some fresh vegetables, but he has to go. The young man is not particularly strong as a fighter. He looks away thoughtfully. Suddenly he notices something. A little girl fell to the ground and cried because her knees hurt. 2 children turned to her, saying that she was dragging herself along as usual, and noticing that she had fallen, told her to wait until they called for help and would be back soon. The boy scratched his head, also noticing that the girl had fallen. He approached her, sat down and politely asked if he could look at her knees. The girl, with tears in her eyes, was surprised by her uncle and agreed. The young man brought his hand to her knees and used recovery. The girl was surprised and smiled happily, saying that now it doesn't hurt at all. The young man put his finger to his mouth, smiled, winked and told the girl not to say a word to anyone. The happy girl agreed. The boy has a unique set of skills and restoration magic. The satisfied girl bids farewell to her uncle with words of gratitude as he leaves, waving back. Walking down the street past passers-by, the guy opens the bag on his belt because he wants to drink a little. He has a small bag with things from which he takes out a bottle. The guy ponders why Jill suddenly invited him to a bar without even inviting Aisha. Thinking that he wants to talk about the upcoming promotion in the guild to rank B, he continues walking down the street. After some time, the protagonist meets a young man named Jill who is the leader of the Black Wolves Guild. He sits at the bar with a smile and gently asks Red if he could stop working for them. Gil's smile drops, asking again what's so strange and confused by Red's surprise. Saying he's trying to be polite and not be rude, he points at the young man in front of him and says he's fired. Reda stands up and asks Gil how this could have happened, and so suddenly, to which his interlocutor answers him that it wasn't so suddenly, their guild, Jet Black Wolves, could rise from rank C to rank B. The young man also asks again if he heard everything correctly and what it means. He does not believe what is happening. The guild leader tells him to judge for himself. He can't carry ballast with him all the time, especially when that ballast is dragging him down. Red asks if he won't even do as an assistant. Jill can't take it anymore and angrily slams her mug on the table, spilling her drink out of it. He looks at the guy furiously and asks if he understands that they have been working on themselves since they were young, since they were 20, just like him, and explains that there is no rank for assistants, so he should just leave here silently. Also, all the things that were given to him, they take back. Red was surprised, and Jill says that with the transition to another rank, former B-rank guilds give equipment to newcomers, and he will not accept their things to challenge. Reda asks to wait, and objects that then he will not be able to do anything as a hero, looking at Jill. Jill with a wide smile asks him again, what hero? With a disgusted face he explains that he will not become one, and that he should go home to his farm and work there. Reda stands up, shocked by the news, and slams his hand on the table. Then he raises his hand to his chest, exhaling heavily. And he said goodbye to Gil, receiving in response not the most pleasant words about how useless Red was. As the guy leaves, his now former guild leader continues to drink with laughter and says that without him they will definitely get B rank. To the loud laughter of Gil and the words of gratitude for the visit with the wish to come again from the bar worker, the dejected young man leaves. Reda sadly walks along the night street of the city. At the meeting, the girl recognizes him and calls out to him, and the guy is surprised by Linda. Their eyes met. Linda, Reda's girlfriend, looks at him in surprise and asks if he left the Adventurers Guild. They stand in the middle of the street. Linda clarifies with the young man that he is no longer an adventurer and will no longer be able to earn money, having received consent in response. Her look changes. She starts looking down at him and says that she doesn't need him anymore and that they are breaking up. The guy is surprised and asks again how they can break up. The girl shakes her head and insults him. She explains that if he doesn't have money, then he's not worthy of her attention and dating him is a waste of time, tossing her hair back. The guy looks at her with confusion and says that she didn't think that way before. He did everything for her sake and asks if she was really with him only for the money. Linda confidently replies that it is natural that only rich men can be with such a beautiful woman as she, and Reda says that he wanted to help because she owed money to her parents. She laughed and even asked him again if he really fell for it, and then added that she hadn't seen her parents for many years. The shocked young man realized that the girl had lied to him and asked why she had done it. Linda approached the guy. Looking him straight in the eye, she said that, of course, it was all about the money. After that, she turned around and waved to Red, saying goodbye, because she had a date. The still shocked young man asked who she had a date with. She, in response, with her usual smile, explained that with a man who has money, because unlike the guy, he is also an adventurer. Red tried to stop her, but she did not turn around and simply answered that he should not talk to her anymore. The guy stayed in his place, continuing to call her, but she was leaving. He turned around and, dejected, also left. It's a new day. The sun is high in the sky. Birds are flying by Red's window as he lies on his bed. Empty glass bottles are lying on the floor nearby, clanking against each other. The remains have been poured onto the floor. He opened his eyes, wondering if it was morning. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he clutched his aching head, noticed the bottles of sake, and remembered the events of the previous day. The faces of former guild leader Gil and ex-girlfriend Linda appear before his eyes, laughing at him, but he grins and is surprised that he can allow himself to laugh even in such a situation. The guy stood up and slapped himself across the cheeks. He took off his top and went to the shower to freshen up, ready to start looking for a new job. The Adventurers Guild headquarters, the royal capital. Dressed in his healer's outfit, the hero comes to find a job that he can handle. Having scared Red, a worker addresses him from behind, saying that they were waiting for him. She smiled. The boy turns around and recognizes Sarah. Sarah smiles and invites him to come in through the back door, and then respectfully asks him to tell his story. The boy agrees. Sarah, the staff of the Royal Capital Adventurers Guild headquarters. Sitting at the table, the surprised worker shakes her head, asking why Jill made such a stupid mistake, and Red is surprised by these words. She believes that Jill is wrong and that their guild will accept Red, and also offers to promote the Black Wolves Guild to rank B. Red is surprised again. Sarah goes on to explain that it's because Red is a humble adventurer and can use recovery magic, plus he has a bag of items. The guy waves it off and asks if recovery magic alone isn't enough, explaining that his bag is only needed to carry luggage. A frustrated Sarah sighs heavily, hanging her head. She understands the situation and says that she wanted to be nice to Reda, and she is sorry that others treated him so badly. But, looking at him, she still says that both the restoration magic and the bag of items are rare. The worker claims that if it weren't for the problematic Black Wolves Guild, the adventurer's rank would be higher. Reda waves her off, saying that it's all nonsense. Losing her composure, Sarah jumps up and explains to the boy that he doesn't value himself at all. The modest young man says that, in any case, he came to the guild today to get a new job. Sarah is shocked, apologizes for not being able to help but worry, and shows everything they have to offer. Putting the ads on the table, the worker points to the groups looking for a healer, laying them out in front of the guy. The guy reads a completed form, which says that Count Rodenwald from the city of Amurt is looking for immigrants. Surprised, he asks the worker about it, and she apologizes, explaining that it was an advert about them looking for new immigrants, and they got it all mixed up again. Red, who is thinking about the city of Amurt, which is not so far from the royal capital, reflects on the fact that he left his city to start all over again in the royal capital. And then, greatly surprising Sarah, he says that he will go to Amurt, pointing his finger at the announcement. Night, a camp set up outside the city, the crackling of a fire, in front of which a young man sits on a large boulder. Reda says that the night is still cold, despite the approach of spring, sipping a hot drink. He remembers how Sarah did everything she could to keep him. She gave him a letter of recommendation for the Amurt Guild, since her friend works in the guild of this city, and arranged for a merchant to take the young man halfway. Reda carefully put his hand into the item bag, deciding that he would cook a fatty piece of beef for dinner today. He knows that thanks to the bag, raw meat will never spoil during travel, smiling at the meat. Then he took out butter, milk, vegetables, salt, pepper and bread, saying, "That's it." He put the frying pan over the fire and began to fry raw meat, the night starry sky, against the background of which the sounds of an owl are emitted. The young man asks in surprise, what else is there? A girl was hiding behind a rock. He looked in her direction and, asking who was there, told her to come out. She silently, pressing her hands to her chest and walking barefoot on the stones, looked out, surprising Red with her presence. The girl looked out under the moonlight with lifeless eyes, dirty and in torn clothes. Reda closed the bag and was surprised by the girl, thinking about why she was in rags. He asked her if there was anyone else, mom or dad. She shook her head. The young man thought that this was madness. A small child standing here in the wilderness. He asked again if she was hungry, if she wanted to eat with her uncle, to which the girl remained silent. Red smiled and began to beckon with the words, come on, asking if she was cold, saying that he was lonely on his own and that he hoped that she would have dinner with him. The girl looked at the boy with fear, her stomach growling. Under the beautiful starry sky, she began to approach Reda's camp. Covered with a cloak given to her by the young man, the girl sat and ate silently under the crackling fire. The young man continued to cook, cutting meat in a frying pan and thinking that she was probably very hungry. After eating, the girl's stomach was still growling, thereby attracting the attention of the guy, and their eyes met. Reda smiled and handed her a piece of meat, saying that she could have more and that this was left just for her. She looked at him with a spoonful of food. After a while, the cups of food became empty and were put aside. The girl awkwardly thanked for the food. The young man responded with a hearty welcome. Reda, summing up what they had had dinner, introduced himself to the girl, uncertainly saying that he was, like, an adventurer. He sat in front of her. The girl answered that she was Mina, looking into the boy's eyes and sitting next to him. She held the gifted cloak in her hands, and her eyes became filled with life. The boy asked if she had a home or a place she could go. Mina shook her head. The boy thought, closing his eyes and putting his hand to his chin. Then he looked at the girl and said that then she could come with him. Throwing a log into the fire, Reda said that from here he was going to the city of Amurt, and on the way he was stopping in a small town. The girl hesitantly asked if this was true, to which he confirmed with a smile. He looked at her legs, bruised and scratched, and asked if they hurt, immediately saying that he could cure them, but he would have to touch them. Mina noticed and said that he had no medicine. He sat down and took her legs, smilingly telling her that he could do without them, and then spoke to heal the girl's wounds. Using the restoration, the girl's legs healed with a bright light. Mina was surprised and delighted and said that it didn't hurt anymore, looking at her legs. Then she looked at the guy and thanked him, but forgot the boy's name, which Reda reminded her with a smile. She smiled happily and repeated his words of gratitude. After that, he gave Mina tea with honey to warm her up, and they went to sleep together in a small tent under a blanket. The next day, the wheels of a wooden cart are rattling. Mina is glad to have met such a kind man as Red, and he says that he is even more glad. The driver of the cart turns to the boy, bringing news that a village is visible ahead. They are located on a hill from where you can see the whole village with wide streets and wooden houses, which is called Morelia. Reaching the village tavern, Red and Mina thank them for helping them on their way, receiving good wishes in return. In front of the tavern, they meet an old man who laughingly asks what brought the father and daughter to this godforsaken city. The old man says his name is Raz Morelia, and he is the mayor of this small town. The boy introduces himself in response. The boy says they are here for a few days, and he will not remain indebted to the old man by shaking his hand. The old man agrees. The mayor notices that the girl is dirty, especially when he sees her feet and hair, and asks if she accidentally stepped in a puddle. Then he says that in any case they can take a bath at the hotel and buy clothes and shoes at the store, which can be reached by walking down the road. The hotel belongs to his daughter, and the store belongs to a grandmother. The young man thanks her for her kindness. The old man winked and laughed and explained that although the town was small, the people here were friendly and the food was delicious. They could always rest here. After a while, the mayor's daughter meets them, she was cleaning, and says welcome to the Sparrow Feathers Hotel. Reda and Mina say that they would like to stay there for the night, and the owner, noticing the girl, says that they need to take a bath. The mayor's daughter opens the shoe cabinet, telling them that room 21 is on the second floor, and for 2 silver coins they can get a room with food. Taking the boots and approaching the visitors, she gives Red the boots, explaining that he can't go shopping for clothes barefoot. She will lend him the shoes. After the bath they can go to the store with their daughter. Reda and the timid Mina thank the girl, after which Reda turns to Mina when she has climbed off his shoulders and asks if she will go take a bath. The girl agrees. Then Reda realizes, looking up, looks down at Mina, and asks if she can take a bath alone. Mina looks away and cries out in embarrassment that she is not a little girl anymore. The girl went to the bathroom. She took off her clothes and carefully put them in a basket that was in the cabinet. Then the girl opened the door and entered the bath itself. She was very happy and said that she had not taken a bath for a long time. Mina was taking a bath. She first scrubbed her back with a brush and then poured cold water on herself. After washing herself, the girl sat in the water. She looked at her hand and began to think, saying father and daughter, and that it embarrassed her a little. Coming out of the bath, she told Reda that she had finished washing herself while he was sitting at the table drinking hot tea. The girl apologizes for making Reda wait. He replies that everything is fine, offering to go buy her clothes and shoes. The innkeeper wishes them a safe journey, telling Mina to ask him to buy her the most beautiful clothes. Mina asks again, embarrassed, standing at the door, and Reda waves her hand and says that they are leaving. After a while, they reach the store. Grandma greets them, and Red, having said hello, says that he would like to buy clothes and shoes. Grandma notices the adventurer parent and daughter. The saleswoman is very surprised at the rags this poor girl is wearing. She asks if the guy had any spare clothes, and Reda awkwardly says no, while Mina hides behind him. The grandmother quickly went to the clothes in the display windows, asking to wait a minute while she looked for something suitable for her. After picking up the items, she approaches them and shows them, explaining that the dress is made of one piece of fabric, thus it will help her travel in comfort, and then offering to try it on. Mina took her things and ran to the fitting room. Grandmother, having waited for the girl to leave, asked Reda what the problem was, to which he, shaking his head, said that he hoped to find someone in this town who knew this girl. The saleswoman says that she has never seen this girl here, despite the fact that this is a small town. All the residents know each other by sight. The guy agrees understandingly. After changing, Mina looks out from behind the fitting room curtain and calls the guy, after which she comes out and shyly asks him how she looks. Red, who was pushed by his grandmother, says that she is beautiful and that it suits her. Mina is happy. The guy, seeing her, thought that it was cute and that he did not expect that everything would go so far. The grandmother, with a bright smile, asks Mina what she wants to try on next. The girl asks again in surprise, and the saleswoman explains that she is a traveler, which means that one set of clothes will not be enough. Reda patted the girl on the head with a smile, telling his grandmother to try to choose an outfit that Mina would like. She found a new outfit and went to the dressing room, coming out of which she approached Red and, hoping that he would like it, asked him how he liked the outfit. Grandma said that it suited her very well. After changing again, Mina started to spin around in front of Red and her grandmother, asking about her new outfit. The guy said that it was just wonderful. Then he and his grandmother smiled and suggested the next outfit, shocking the girl. The happy grandmother said that she would pick out another pair of clothes, and Red thanked her, seeing a new set in front of him. After a while, it was evening. Mina and Reda were walking home after shopping. Reda offered to help Mina by carrying her things, and she shook her head. Then she looked at the guy with embarrassment, holding a bag of things in her hands, and turned to Reda. He looked at her and asked what was wrong. Mina smiled brightly and sincerely thanked for the clothes, saying that she would treasure them. A happy Reda wished her good health, and then added that when they returned to the hotel, they would have dinner. They reached a large house with a sign that said hotel, sat down at the table and thanked for the food. The happy girl said it was a great steak. Reda added that he had heard that demon pigs were a local dish and so he had never eaten such meat before. The innkeeper replied that it was their specialty. After collecting the empty plates from their table onto a tray, she turns to the heroes and noted that their demon pigs were the best in the city. Having put the dishes behind a counter, the hotel owner also said that they had been having problems lately, and Red, hearing the noise from the street, turned towards the exit. The owner of the hotel also heard, turned around and, taking off the bandage from her hair, ran to the exit saying that she would go and see what was going on there. Red also stood up and went to the exit, wanting to find out what happened on the street, and, looking out, he was surprised. He saw a large number of wounded people, among whom stood a grandmother and the mayor of the city, shouting that he would bring potions from the warehouse, and a girl asking the wounded to hold on. As Red leaves the hotel, he looks around, noticing how many people are wounded. Mina asks what's wrong with them, while the residents help the wounded. The wounded villagers lying on the carts are offered painkillers, and Red notices that some of them are in pretty bad shape. He immediately puts on gloves, approaches the wounded and says that he is a healer. Attracting their attention, he adds that he can use a small restorative spell to help them. The mayor's daughter is surprised and looks at the guy as he tells Mina to stay at the hotel, but she runs after him, saying that she will go with him. Reda approaches the innkeeper and says that he will help the seriously wounded, and she points to the cart and says that he is there. The guy approaches a cart in which a man lies in serious condition, and next to him stands a grandmother who says that they will not be able to help him, since Reda's restorative magic will not save him because of the torn abdominal cavity. He touches the man's stomach and excitedly says that he will try anyway, using the restoration. Mina approaches her grandmother and asks what happened to this man. She brought medicine, painkillers, and disinfectants. The grandmother thanks Mina. Then he explains that they were suddenly attacked by a pack of demon wolves, and that these wolves also attacked their demon pigs. Mina gives the medicine to her grandmother. The man who came to his senses says with difficulty that he wanted to get rid of the wolf demon, but it attacked him. He hopes that they will help him. Reda was surprised that the man came to his senses and immediately asked him not to talk. A worried Red began to think that he couldn't close the wound, so he had to learn advanced recovery magic for such situations. Trying his best, he said that since he couldn't do it the first time, he would do it until he succeeded, using the restoration spell over and over again, 3 times in a row. The man was surprised and said that he no longer felt pain. After that, he removed the bandage and turned his attention to his stomach, saying that his wounds had healed. The grandmother was very surprised, wondering how he was able to heal such severe injuries. A tired Reda stood before the grateful man. He turned to the saleswoman and explained that it was elementary restoration magic, and immediately asked who was next, using the wind of purification spell on his hands. One of the villagers called out to him, calling him over and saying there were 4 seriously wounded. Next to him was a grandmother asking for help for her son. Mina folded her arms and wished Red luck, and he waved at her and went to the other wounded. After some time and using the restoration again, he said that this was the last one, holding the man's crippled hand. The man immediately twitched his hand, checking that nothing else hurt, and bowed to Red, thanking him profusely a couple of times. The tired Red wiped the sweat from his forehead until the mayor of the city called out to him. Turning around, he saw many villagers bowing to him in gratitude, and the mayor said that he could not thank him enough for saving the lives of the young men of their village. Surprised, Red raised his hands and asked them to raise their heads, because he was doing what he was supposed to. The mayor approached the boy and said that he was sorry that the city treasury only had 500 silver coins, but he hoped that it would be enough for Red. Red was surprised by such a quantity, because it was ordinary first aid, and said that he would not take that much money. The mayor asked if the guy was joking, because even if it was first aid, there were a lot of wounded, so he personally would have indicated a price of 2,000 silver coins for such work. Red was even more shocked, and the saleswoman grandmother said that perhaps Red was a priest or a healer and asked if he knew how much they charged for treatment. Reda put his hand behind his head and explained that he usually treated minor injuries and never paid attention to the price. Mina hugged him with a smile. The innkeeper said that few people could use recovery magic, so it was a rarity, and that the price of treatment with magic was several times more than the price of treatment with potions. The mayor shook his head and said that, not to mention healing a dying person, if Reda became their priest and healer, how much would it cost? Grandma said that even if he could use basic recovery magic, adventurers would immediately want to take him into their guild, thereby surprising Red. The boy now understood the value Sierra was talking about. He then suggested that he would simply agree to pay for tonight's lodging, but the villagers shook their heads, saying that this would not stop them from thanking him. Mina tugged at Red's sleeve, and when their eyes met, she told him they would come back and pay for the night. The mayor looked at them and realized. After which he said that whenever the 2 of them would come to Morelia, all food and accommodation would be free for them. A joyful Mina smiled and praised Red, catching him off guard. The guy said that this was a very big reward for him, and also asked if they could go out on a hike tomorrow and kill these demon wolves. The mayor, after thinking about it, said that it was worth going because they could kill all the cattle and demonic pigs and then attack the city, which he would not allow. Reda said he would go with them, surprising the mayor, who asked if the boy was sure about that. He explained that he and Mina were heading to Amurt and he didn't want her to attack them on the way while stroking the girl's hair. Reda also said that he didn't think this adventure would hinder him in any way, although he rarely used it, he still learned some attack magic. The mayor smiled and said that if someone used restoration magic, that was all it would take to make everyone feel safe. Reda and the mayor shook hands, saying that they were very glad to have met each other. After a while, he returned to his hotel room and, stretching, said that he was very tired and that Mina had tried hard today, noting how good he felt after the bath. Mina thanked Reda in return. Having climbed into bed under the blanket, the girl called out to Red. The guy looked at her and asked what happened. She pulled the blanket to her face and said that he was cool today. Reda, embarrassed, blushed, put his hand behind his head and thanked Mina. After that, he approached the glowing sphere, brought his hand to it and told the girl that it was time to go to bed. Having extinguished the sphere, the boy wished good night and the girl wished them sweet dreams, and they went to bed. The next morning, young guys with weapons gathered on the street and discussed something while listening to the songs of birds. The assembled Red came out and greeted everyone, and they told him to command. He said decisively that these demonic wolves must be destroyed. Everyone agreed. Not far from the city, the squad was attacked by demonic wolves. The warriors surrounded the carts and defended them. A magician girl with a large wound on her leg apologized for the fact that her right leg was completely paralyzed. The guy turned around and noticed Feifa's wound. Cursing, the warrior with the sword asks what the demonic wolves are doing near such a town. Then he shouts for all to hear that they must protect the employer and his carriage. Feifa bandaged her leg to stop the bleeding. The archer on the cart says that the fur is so tough that arrows can't penetrate it at all, and the swordsman thinks that if this continues it will end badly. He turns to the wounded girl and asks if she can use her magic now. With heavy breathing, Feifa says that she still can, and addresses the spirit of fire holding her staff and spellbook. He then swings his staff and uses a firebolt spell, commanding the spirit of fire to burn his enemies to ashes. Several blows hit the demon wolf, one of which hits it right in the eye but does not kill it. Feifa notes that this is not good, because one shot is not enough to kill him, and again turns to the spirit of fire. The wolf, angry at the girl, ran past the warrior and attacked her, surprising the swordsman with his behavior. Feifa, not having time to pronounce the spell to the end, moves away from the wolf in fear. At this moment, Red crashes into the wolf with her shoulder and interrupts the wolf's attack on the sorceress. The wolf falls to the ground not far from them, and the swordsman, shouting, "Good job," swings his sword and plunges it into the immobilized demon wolf, thus killing it. Red, holding his shoulder, turns to the joyful shouts of the other warriors, encouraging him and Captain Riggs, who plunged the sword. Captain Riggs offers the inspired guys to deal with the remaining demonic wolves, to which they agree. Reda approached the wounded warrior and, raising his hand, began to heal him, instructing him that even if he healed, the lost blood and physical strength would not return, so he should not overdo it. After which the guy comes up to Faye and politely asks if he can examine her badly injured leg. The protagonist touches the wound, causing the girl to feel very painful. He then uses a restoration spell to ease the girl's pain. She is very surprised when she realizes that the pain is gradually going away. After this, Reda turns to the captain and the others, asking if they are adventurers. They agree and say that they are escorting merchants from the royal capital. The employer, Mr. Eric, gets out of the carriage, surprised by Riggs. By this point, Reda had finished healing Feifa's leg, removing her hands, after which the girl began to move her leg, surprised that it had already healed. Captain Riggs holds up his wounded hand and asks if he can help them too. Reda agrees, using a restoration spell and saying that they have come to get rid of the wolves. Mr. Eric, looking out of the carriage, thanks the protagonist, and begins a conversation regarding the payment for the treatment. Reda waves it off with a smile, saying that everything is fine, no need to pay, he treated for free. Riggs, swinging his sword, also thanked. The captain immediately begins giving orders, telling Feifa to take on the wolves to the left of the carriage and for the warriors from the city to get rid of the wolf to the right. With a battle cry forward, they begin moving toward the pair of wolves. With a cry of battle, they surround the wolves one by one and attack, using swords, bows, and halberds as weapons. The warrior resting next to Reda says that if they continue like this, he is sure that they will be able to destroy their entire pack, as long as the hero uses restoration on the warriors who were wounded. Concerned, he turns towards the forest and asks everyone to wait, after which the others turn to a large black shadow between the trees. He says that something is approaching. A huge demonic wolf with a scar on its face appears in front of the warriors from the town, slowly walking towards them. Amazed and shocked, the boys look at him, asking what it is, and are surprised by his huge size, assuming that he is the leader of the pack. With a flick of his tail, he sends a warrior flying, breaking his spear in the process, and throws others aside. The pack leader continues his way to the cart, looking wild and seeing the other demon wolves dead on the ground. The warrior tells Red to just look at him, and he agrees that this demonic wolf is definitely the leader of the pack. The leader of the pack of demonic wolves opens his mouth wide and howls into the air, frightening all the warriors around, but Captain Riggs and Feifa begin to take out their weapons. The girl screams that he is heading towards them while all the warriors stand ready and wait for his actions. One of the warriors stands in front of Reda and says that although he is not very reliable, he will protect the main character. Reda takes out a book of spells and says that there is nothing to be done, he also needs to act. He concentrates and calls upon the spirit of fire, commanding it to burn the enemy to ashes. The warrior watches over his shoulder, shocked. Reda points her hand forward and shouts a spell to strike with firebolts, which attack the leader of the wolf pack. Seeing the result, the protagonist exclaims that he stopped the wolf, immediately continuing to use the spell of fire spears, piercing and burning enemies to ashes. Piercing fiery spears pass through the wolf throughout its entire body, lifting it off the ground. The dead leader of the pack falls lifelessly to the ground as the spears disappear in front of the armed warriors. Feifa asks in surprise what it was, and a shocked Captain Riggs asks if it was really the original fire magic, since it is so powerful. The warrior who stood up to protect Red lowers his sword and tells him how incredible his magic is. It was the first time he had seen such a sight. Red doesn't think there is anything special about it and says that even though he is an F rank, he is still an adventurer magician. Captain Riggs shouts not to relax, because even though the leader is dead, the demon wolves are still there. Feifa asks what the rest of the pack is. Reda says that she will also go with them to fight the rest of the pack, and asks to look after the carriage. The village of Morelia, Mina, dressed as a cleaning lady with a mop, sits at the hotel table and thinks about the fact that Reda still hasn't returned. The grandmother at the table with her, drinking tea, tells the girl not to worry, because her dad will soon return safe and sound. The owner of the inn calls out to the grandmother, who turns out to be her mother, and Mina, saying that the younger ones and Reda have returned. Mina comes out excitedly from the hotel, near which the mayor of the town is sitting, and sees the children joyful about their victory, as well as the merchants' carts, but she only looks at Reda. Seeing Reda really safe and sound, the happy girl smiles contentedly, feeling relieved. Reda also notices the girl in the crowd of townspeople. Mina ran towards Red, and he spread his arms, and she jumped into his arms, happy about his return. Evening came, people lit a big fire and held a banquet in honor of the victory over the pack of wolves. Reda, sitting with the mug, says that it is very nice to enjoy the taste of ale after work, and notes that Mina also seems to be having fun because she is dancing with the innkeeper with a joyful smile on her face. The mayor of the town approaches Reda and asks him how he likes the holiday, and whether he is having fun. The young man replies that this banquet is wonderful. The old man sits down next to him and says that he would like to talk to Reda about tomorrow's trip to Amore. The employer from the rescued cart, Mr. Eric, approaches them, greeting Mayor Morelia and Red, and the mayor replies that the merchant is just in time. The man says he didn't introduce himself properly, and says he is Eric Raha from the Raha Company. Reda shakes his hand and says his name is Radha Dixon and he is pleased to meet him. Mr. Eric thanks him for his help in today's attack. And then he explains that, thanks to him, all their companions are safe and sound, and even the potions were not harmed at all. Now they can calmly continue their journey to Amurt. Reda says that this is very good. They look at Mina dancing, and the merchant asks whether the protagonist will take his daughter with him to Amurt. He also says that he can offer them a ride in his carriage to the city. Reda replies that it would be wonderful, and Mina calls out to him. He looks at the girl holding her grandmother's hand, and Mina invites him to dance with them. Behind them, the rest of the villagers dance. The innkeeper started pushing Red in the back and pulling Mina by the hand while he asks them to wait because he doesn't know how to dance. The girl tells him to just dance as best he can and urges him to hurry. Mayor Morelia and Mr. Eric leave, waving goodbye to the boy until tomorrow. Reda and Mina hold hands and begin to dance to the music, surrounded by other dancing townspeople. Men play musical instruments for them, drums, lute and horn, creating music and encouraging everyone to dance. The main character said each step, counting 1, 2, 3 out loud, and Mina laughed at this. He realized that he was dancing like a bear, but he continued, looking at the happy girl in front of him. A tipsy young man remembers his ex-girlfriend Linda, and his mood worsens. The innkeeper asks the hero what happened and why he is so gloomy. Reda, embarrassed by being called a hero, asks not to call him that. Mina, seeing this scene, laughed, while the hero looked at her, asked why she was laughing, and realized that he had something to think about. The girl explains to the boy that it is because his face is flushed. Continuing to look at the girl, he began to think about whether it is worth taking Mina with him, because here in Morelia no one knows her, and his journey ends in Amurda. Reda understands that this does not mean that the girl will find her acquaintances in Amurt, and in Morelia she has more and more friends. He looks at the girl, calls out to her and, taking her by the hand, says that tomorrow they are going to Amurt. Mina smiles happily and says that it is good and she is looking forward to it. The young man smiles relaxedly, casting aside his doubts. He stands in front of her and tells her that it will be hard from tomorrow, so he suggests going to bed after this song. The girl agrees. The next morning, the protagonist, ready to leave, shook Mr. Eric's hand and thanked him, and he was reciprocated, adding that we need to help each other in difficult times. The innkeeper and her mother approached Mina with a basket and said that these were cookies that they had made together and would be just the thing for them to snack on the road. The girl thanked them. The town's residents and mayor said goodbye to Reda, telling him to definitely come again and that he was always welcome. Mr. Eric, already seated in the carriage, called out to the hero and told him to get in quickly too, since there was no need to delay the farewell. All the villagers saw them off. Everyone shouted to them as they set off on their journey to be sure to come again. They were always happy to see them. The children of the residents shouted that they were waiting for them, and Reda and Mina waved goodbye to them. After leaving the city, Captain Riggs, sitting with them in the carriage, sighed and said that, as it turned out, it was still too early for their group to fight the demonic wolves. Feifa, next to them, nodded in agreement. He hung his head and said that even though Reda used such strong recovery magic, he was still an F rank, and Feifa noted that the attack magic was also amazing. Riggs is hesitant because he and Feifa are also F ranks and whether they will ever be able to rise to E rank. Reda tells him that they are still young, so he is confident that they will succeed, and if they try hard enough, C and B ranks will not be a dream. The swordsman smiles and says that it will be good if that is indeed the case. At that moment, the archer calls out to him and says that it looks like the situation is getting worse and he will need the leader's help. Captain Riggs confidently tells Feifa that it's time for them to get to work. The mage girl agrees. They get out of the cart. Mr. Eric says that if they continue like this, they will arrive in Amurt before evening. Reda is surprised and asks if it is really that fast, because he heard that the journey takes 2 days. The man explains to him that if you go along the old road, then before you had to go around, but now everything is developing steadily, new bridges and roads are being built, so it has become much easier to get around. Surprised Reda notes that Amurt's development is amazing. Mina listens to the conversation with curiosity and looks at Reda. They continue their journey towards the mountain in good company. Mina eats delicious cookies from a basket given to her by the innkeeper. After some time, Reda turns towards the cab driver and notices a large wall and says that she sees a city. Mr. Eric asks if this is Amurt. It is reported that many people are working on the construction of the outer wall. Since the city is just developing, there are still few buildings and still many places where there is nothing but earth and a road. Mr. Eric adds that the city is very nice and lively, and Reda, thoughtfully, says that in that case, there is plenty of work here even for a non-adventurer. The man says that they have almost arrived, and if he and Mina have any difficulties, they can safely contact the Raha company. He will definitely return the debt for the service. Reda asks about the service in surprise. Mr. Eric, tapping on the boxes of goods, explains that he is talking about their destruction of the demonic wolves, because thanks to them, they can now continue to trade without worrying about anything. Reda thanks him for letting him ride in Mr. Eric's carriage, and he can also contact her if any difficulties arise. Then the guy notices that Mina has become quiet, and looking at her, he sees that the girl has fallen asleep, leaning against the young man. The man laughed with a smile, saying that it seemed that their conversation was too boring for the young lady. After exiting the wagon, Reda thanks them for their help, and the man says that they are now heading to the merchant gate. Captain Riggs and Feifa bid farewell to the heroes, suggesting that if fate brings them together again, they should go on a mission together. Reda and Mina looked at each other, and the guy invited them to go into Amurt, after which they took each other's hands and entered the gate. In front of Red and Mina there is a wide street with 2- and 3-story houses, along which many people walk and carts drive. The hero looks at the map, holding the girl's hand. After some time, the protagonist reaches the Adventurers Guild of the Amur branch. The heroes are met with good wishes by Millet, an employee of the guild, who asks how they can help. Reda says that he would like to move here and register with this guild, looking at the girl in front of him with a smile. The guild employee asks again that they want to move, and if so, she politely invites them to come to the far table. Sitting at a distant table, Red and Mina are given a form to fill out, which the guild will contact them with. The hero takes a pen and writes Radha Dixon's name in the field, noting that the girl also needs to write one. The boy fills in the field for the girl who sits next to him and reads Mina Dixon, watching the boy's actions. Reda apologizes for not wanting to interfere and hopes she doesn't mind, looking at the girl. Mina lowers her head and shakes it negatively, then smiles that everything is fine and she is grateful. Moving on to the next field, where you need to indicate the purpose of the move, the hero thinks and hopes that Mina's relatives will be here. Then you can write the reason and ask the guild about it later. He then puts his hand into his bag of items on his belt, remembering and taking out a letter, and explained that it was a letter of recommendation from the Royal Headquarters Guild. The worker accepted the letter, asking to see it. Greatly surprised, Millet reveals that it is not a letter of recommendation, greatly shocking Red. And then she starts explaining that it's not a letter of recommendation, but a recommendation from Sira. Mina, worried, asks if something is wrong, but the employee explains that it's better than a regular letter of recommendation. And then he asks if it is true that the letter says that Mr. Dixon can use healing magic, thinking that he earns money in the Healers Guild. Reda confirms, but says that he can only use restoration. The worker jumps up and says that even just the ability to use healing magic, even if it's just restoration, is priceless, and asks if she can ask for the request to be processed as soon as possible. Reda asks about the request. The hero refuses, politely asking to wait, because he doesn't even know where he will stay with Mina today, but Millet said that in that case, the guild has an inn that they work with, and the heroes can stay there. The employee adds that the inn will of course be paid for by the guild, and they will also give them free access to the guild's grimoires. Reda is grateful to them for this. Having calmed down, Millet asks the hero whether he ultimately accepts their application, looking into his eyes. Reda puts her hand behind her head and says that it is just healing magic that replaces the potion, but the worker says that there is no problem with that, bows and thanks. She hands over a sealed letter and says it is for the inn, and Reda accepts it with gratitude. Sometime later, in the evening, the main characters come to the hotel, where they are met by Riggs Dolan, the owner of the hotel called the Bearded Dwarf, and next to him stood a girl who introduced herself as Milan. Red shakes Riggs's hand and introduces himself back along with Mina, explaining that the girl is a bit shy and he hopes that Milan will become friends with Mina. The girls smiled happily and shook hands with each other. Milan asked if she lived in this city and if Mina would be friends with her. Mina shyly agreed. The innkeeper remarks that his daughter has taken a liking to Red's daughter, and that they seem to be having fun. Red awkwardly reveals that Mina is not his daughter, surprising Riggs. Riggs Dolan says that anything can happen when a person is an adventurer, and he won't go into details, because if she is under Reda's protection, then so be it. Then he says that the room is shared, saying that it would be better to take a free one. Red says he has no more questions and thanks them for their hospitality. The owner of the Bearded Dwarf says he is happy to help and that since they will be living under the same roof, they should treat them like family. Riggs asked his daughter to show the guests their room and not to forget about the bathroom and toilet. A happy Maylene says that she understands everything, and her father says that they will all eat together later, so she should join in too. The innkeeper's daughter takes Mina by the hand and pulls her along, inviting her to go, while Red and Riggs are left chatting among themselves. After some time, Milan, carrying a tray of food on her head, runs to the table with a smile, apologizing for the wait and telling them that the pilaf, salad, and soup with a lot of meat are ready. She puts the plates on the table and sits down next to Mina, and opposite them is Red, waiting for the others. When everything is brought, they wish each other a bon appetit and begin to eat with a smile. Mina starts with the hot soup, and after trying a spoon, she shouts about how delicious the food is with a happy face. Mealing, supporting the happy Mina, says that her dad's food is always very delicious. Mina really likes it, she says that it is magical. Reda, eating the pilaf, comments on it saying that it is perfectly fried, crispy, aromatic, and delicious. In his opinion, the pilaf is a bit salty on the grill. The other guests of the inn also express their satisfaction and praise Mr. Riggs, noting that they always perceived the gnomes as blacksmiths. And Reda says that both food and a sword can do anything. Malin tells the guests that her father used to make swords, but after his daughter was born he became a cook. Reda says that Milan has a cool dad, and she says with a bright smile that it is definitely true. The heroes return to their room. The guy says that the owner's daughter is a very cheerful child. Mina agrees and says that they have become friends a little. The young man says that this is good, because they will be here for some time. Then they hear a gentle knock on the door, and turns around to ask who is there. Suddenly, Milan comes in and invites Mina to go to the bathroom with a smile on her face. Mina and Malin go into a special room together, and Mina helps her new friend wash her hair. Then she pins up her hair and asks if the innkeeper's wife is here. Mealing says that despite this, she has a lot of fun doing things with her father every day. And then, looking at the heroine, he says that sometimes things are strange, or rather, sometimes they have problems with guests. Then she suddenly jumps out and says that her father then does this, taking a heroic pose with a smile. After which, folding her arms across her chest, she tells him that her friend's father is just as good. Mina smiles and says that Reda is indeed a very kind and good person. The girls hold hands, and Mealing happily shouts that she hopes their fathers get along so well that they can take baths and wash clothes together. At this point, Reda feels awkward hearing the girls and quietly says that Milan is going a bit overboard. The next day, not far from the city, people are cutting down a forest. There is also Red, who takes the wounded hand and uses his restoration magic. The Amur adventurer Tex is surprised to see this healing and says that he is amazed that Red healed 3 people with serious wounds. And then he says that he was wondering what kind of guy Red is, and he turned out to be a good one because he is going to carry out an assignment with a child. The guy apologizes for this and says that he arrived in Amurt only yesterday and therefore cannot leave her alone. Tex puts his hand on the girl's hair and says with a smile that she has a good father, calling her a young lady. Mina thanks him, calling the adventurer uncle. The man makes a sad face and asks the young lady to take it easy, asking her to at least call him big brother, since he is only 40 years old. The warriors nearby say that he is old enough to be called uncle, although he looks more like a grandfather. Then Tex puts one arm around the main character and asks Mina if he is also an uncle to her. The girl, not expecting such a question, thought for a bit. And she said with a smile on her face that it is not so, and Reda is Reda, he is not an uncle. Reda laughs and thanks the girl. After a while, the men look at the protagonist who, not understanding, asks what they want. The adventurer says that he leaves the rest of the work to him, hitting Red on the back, and he, understanding, turns to Tex. Then, he excitedly asks him to wait, and asks what exactly he wants him to do. The man, with a smile on his face, tells him to just try to do something with magic. Reda looked at the adventurers and clarified that they wanted him to cut down trees in the forest, and asked how they imagined it. After thinking about it, he said that it was worth a try, and Tex said that if he had any ideas, then feel free to try. The protagonist agreed and warned them not to come close to him, after which he turned to the spirit of the wind. Concentrating, he commanded the invisible blades to dance, scatter in all directions below, and shouted the spell-cutting blades of wind. Reda cast a spell, and the trees began to fall loudly to the ground, being chopped at the base. Everyone was shocked. Reda said that it was unexpectedly powerful for him. Mina, who was standing behind with the others, said how cool he was. Tex, excited and shocked, shouted that he had, of course, asked for help, but had not expected it to go this far. The other men also spoke up, surprised by what had happened, not believing that these were wind blades, entry-level magic, and saying that Red's wind blades were clearly a level higher, and at this rate they would lose their jobs, and with such skills they would rather become lumberjacks. Red awkwardly raised his hand behind his head and said that he had been on a roll lately. Tex asked that since magic was dependent on the amount of magical power, then given such power, how much of it the hero had. Tex nodded and said that it was enough talking because they had work to do. But he wondered what to do with all the cut wood, suggesting that they put it in a cart, and added that since there were about 30 of them, the time for cutting them down was reduced. Reda stretched his hand forward and used the binding chain spell towards all the cut wood on the ground and tied them up. After which he turned to the others and said that, in fact, he had a special box for things. The protagonist used storage magic and all the chains with wood rushed into his belt bag, emptying the forest of wood and leaving only stumps. All the people around were shocked again, and the adventurer Tex said that the young man was a jack of all trades. Mina, standing with everyone, thought about how good a person Red was, looking at how the guy was happily communicating with others. She smiled and remembered that when she first met him, she thought he was scary and was cautious, but very soon she realized that this was not the case. She only gave her name, but he still treated her well. Reda had always cared for her and was always kind. He was also unlike any healer she had ever known. The men in front of her were shouting that they were leaving earlier than planned, that they would now load up their things, harness the horses, and go home. The healers Mina met only talked about money, while Reda cared about those he healed. The guy says he's going to help the others and asks Mina to wait. Mina waved at Red with a smile and told him to come back soon, thinking how lucky she was to have met a man like him. The girl knows that he asked Mrs. Millet from the guild and Mr. Riggs from the inn about her family. She silently looked at the moon, thinking about her family and what would happen if Reda learned the truth about her. She imagines his gloomy face, thinking that he will no longer smile at her, will think that she is terrible, will leave her, but in her heart she screams that she does not want this. Reda waves to her with a smile and calls her home when everyone else has already gathered and harnessed the horses to the carts. She agrees with a smile and says that she is already on her way, realizing that she wants to stay with him. After some time, they reach the bustling city of Amurt, where a mysterious figure in a cloak and hood watches them from above. Under the hood, you can see the face of a girl covered in dirt and abrasions, who holds her hood with her hand and watches the main characters from the roof. After some time, on a new mission, there are two dead monsters lying on the ground, a broken cart and wounded people nearby, near whom is Reda, using restoration magic. The healed warrior stands up and, putting his hand on the hero's shoulder, thanks Radha Dixon for saving him, about whose restoration spell he heard from his sister, but seeing it himself, he was truly convinced that she was amazing, because he thought he would die. Reda is surprised, thinking about which sister he is talking about, and brings her hand to her face. The man brings his hands to his eyes and shows glasses near his eyes with his fingers, telling the hero to look. Reda immediately understands that he is talking about Millet's employee from the Amurt branch of the guild, noting that he really does look like his sister. The young man says, looking at the demon's dead body, that he didn't think such a large monster could appear in this place, and it's only an hour's drive from the city. The warrior says that he usually only noticed small animals. Mina approaches the talking boys and reminds them that they saw demonic wolves in Morelia, drawing attention to herself. She is very excited about what is happening and gets nervous, causing the warrior to think about her words, after which he says that perhaps the animals are fighting for territory. The group looks at the people around them and Reda asks what they will do about it, to which the warrior replies that they need to fix the cart, so they will stay here for the night and leave for Amurt in the morning. Reda, who says that he and Mina will return while it is still light, and the warrior, who replies that they should be careful, shake hands, after which the protagonist and the girl leave, saying goodbye to the entire group who decided to stay the night. Reda and Mina walked into town holding hands and enjoying the wind, rustling leaves and birdsong. Reda, tired after his errand, yawned and attracted Mina's attention, who asked if he was okay and wanted to sleep. The girl then asks him that he was studying magic from the guild's grimoires while she was sleeping yesterday. Reda replied that he fell asleep before it was too late, so everything was fine and he was grateful that she was worried about him. Suddenly, loud sounds came from the forest, scaring the birds, and the heroes paid attention to this, and Mina asked what these sounds were. Then she noticed and pointed her finger and said that there was a small path there, turning to face Reda. He, deciding to find out, said that they should see how things were. If it was dangerous, they would return immediately. Mina said that she understood. Walking along the path, the heroes saw several dead bodies of monsters, as well as a cart among the trees. He ran up to the people and asked if they were okay, immediately saying that he was an adventurer from Amurt. But when he got a better look, he noticed that they were elves, and was very surprised that they were so close to where people lived. The elf man quickly drew his bow and arrow and shouted for the man to stop and not come closer. Reda raised his hands, showing that he would do no harm, and told him to wait, and he was not going to harm, knowing that he, of course, expected that elves did not like people, but that they would be so careful he could not even imagine. He then notices a wounded elf child nearby and asks if he is okay, expressing his concern. The elf with the bow firmly tells Reda that this is their problem and they will deal with it themselves. The elf child was lying on the elf's lap nearby. Mina shouted that this child is suffering, and Reda says that he can use restoration magic. The man also firmly says that they do not trust people. Reda, still holding her hands at her sides, asks them to believe that he will cure her if they let him examine the child. The elf next to her says with tears in her eyes that she is glad that they want to help them, but this elf boy was poisoned by the fangs of a ruby tiger, and normal restoration magic will not help him. Reda shouts that, then if it is poison, he can use a detox spell, giving the elf hope. She rushes to her husband, stopping him from shooting, and asks the protagonist to heal her son. The archer addresses her as Edith, expressing disagreement. Edith, looking at the man in tears, calls him Klaus, and says that if they do nothing, the child, whose name is Kate, may die, so they must trust. At this point, Red runs to the child past the quarreling elves. Klaus, seeing this, pulls the bow again. Edith, continuing to stand near him, says that this man should help them, but Klaus continues to aim. At this moment, Mina covers Red with herself. Mina, shielding Red with her body, says that if he does something wrong, then let the elf shoot her, then they will be even. The elf was very surprised by this. Reda, who examined the elf, thanked the girl, but wondered why she had acted so recklessly. But he decided to start by using a detoxification spell on the elf boy who was lying on the ground. Red thought about how good it was that he had learned the detoxification spell from the grimoires, and that he would continue to prioritize healing spells in his magic training, and use restoration magic. The boy, suffering from the ruby tiger's venom, lay next to Reda. Edith, with tears in her eyes, tells Klaus to look at Keith's complexion, which was getting better. Klaus called out to the boy and lowered his bow, and Mina turned around and said with relief that it seemed like everything had worked out. Klaus knelt down and bowed his head, apologizing to Red and thanking her from the bottom of his heart for healing his son. He also said that they didn't have the money to pay for his treatment. Reda shook his head and waved his hands, asking the elf not to worry about it since he was just an adventurer who could use recovery magic. The hero then takes a piece of paper out of his bag and says that if they want to thank him in some way, they can simply report the completed task to the Amurt Adventurers Guild as payment for his help. Klaus, after reading it, was surprised that it said 5 silver coins, and Edith explained that it was even cheaper than the potion she bought. Mina explained that recently, due to the increase in monsters, the prices of potions have gone up. Reda asked them why they had to go to people specifically for the potion, because the elves had a miracle cure, and he had heard that its effect was much better than that of a regular potion. The elves shook their heads and said that the miracle cure had run out. Red asked why this had happened. Klaus explained that it was all because of the dragon. The protagonist was very surprised by this news. Klaus then told them that a black dragon had recently appeared near their settlement and had begun to attack them frequently. Edith added that their warriors had fought it and had managed to drive it away, but the damage had been too great. They used up all their miracle medicine, and even now many of the warriors are suffering from the injuries they received, and if he attacks again, they will have to leave the village. Mina turned to him with a worried expression on her face, and Red patted her head with a calming smile on his face. Then he turned to Klaus and asked if he could go with them to the village. He thought his restoration magic would be useful there. Edith looked at the elf man, and Klaus said that in that case he would be of great help to them. Red introduced himself. Then the elf said that he would try to convince everyone in the village, so he strongly asked for help in healing their warriors. Keith, who had come to, noticed that the carriage was rocking and his body did not hurt at all, so he decided that he must have died and opened his eyes. Mina noticed this from her seat next to him and asked if he was okay, greatly surprising the elf boy. Still worried about him, she began asking if he was in any more pain, if everything was okay. Keith confirmed. Mina smiled brightly, stopped worrying and folded her hands in front of her and said that then she was happy for him. Keith began to think about how this had happened, amazed, because the last thing he remembered was that he was with his mom and dad, and they, hiding their ears, bought a potion in the human city. And when they were returning, a ruby tiger attacked him and bit him, knocking him to the ground with its heavy weight. And now he sees an angel in front of him, offering him a towel, and some guy sitting next to her, although it doesn't matter. His parents also noticed that the boy woke up. He stood up, took a towel and put it to his forehead and began to speak. Mina asked what he wanted to say, after which the blushing elf told her that his name was Keith and thanked her for her concern, and Mina introduced herself in response and said that she was glad to meet him. Kate began to ask excitedly where she was from. The girl awkwardly answered from Amurt. The elf immediately said that he had also been there recently. And then he began to say that his mother cooks food for the army, and his father uses a sword more often than a bow, surprising everyone around him with his excitement. Reda notices that the trees part and open the way for the carriage, and is surprised by this phenomenon. And Mina notices that when the carriage passes, the trees return to their previous position and the road disappears. Kate keeps looking at the girl. The carriage stopped in the middle of the forest. Mina was surprised, began to look around, and asked why they stopped. A happy and healthy Keith said that this place was only accessible to elves and pointed to the side. A large magic circle appeared directly under the carriage, and the elf explained that it was an ancient portal. They disappeared and appeared in another place where there was a night sky and burnt and broken trees all around. The heroes were surprised to see ruined houses on these trees, and Edith sighed and said that this was their elven settlement. Mina put her hand to her chest and, saddened, said that it was terrible, looking around the surroundings. They stood in front of a huge tree, at the roots of which there was an arch cut out leading to the gate. Klaus asked Reda if he could start healing the warriors right away, and the young man agreed, because that was what he came here for. Another elf was surprised to see that Klaus had returned unharmed, and the elf next to him cried out, reporting that there was a human next to him. The elves ran up to them with their bows and asked Klaus what they were doing. The heroes got off the cart and headed towards the tree. The elves drew their bows and aimed at the humans, asking who had given Klaus permission to bring humans into their settlement. Klaus yells for everyone else to listen, then explains that Red can use healing magic, and that he saved their son's life when he was attacked by a monster on the way. The archers asked again if they had heard correctly about healing magic, and then added that all human healers were greedy swindlers. Mina looked at them and said that Reda was not like that, and Keith also confirmed that Mina's father was not like that. An old elf came out of the tree and asked why it was so loud. The archer turned to him and recognized the elder. Edith said that their family vouched for Red and asked to take him to the warriors to heal him. Red bowed politely and introduced himself to the elder. He also said that he was just an adventurer who could use recovery magic, and at least the effect of such magic would be better than potions, so he would like to start healing as soon as possible if allowed. The elder approached Red and thoughtfully said that at such a time they were visited by a man, and a healer at that. They looked into each other's eyes. After that, he sighed and said that maybe it was time for a change, and agreed to his help. Then he said that he would guide Red Dixon and asked him to save their warriors. The archers were very surprised by the elder's decision. Reda and Mina go inside the tree and see a lot of wounded elves lying on the huge leaves of the tree. The elder says that they are lucky, because thanks to Hildegard, no one died. Mina looked at the elder and asked who Hildegard was. The elder explained that she was the best warrior in their village, and no one could compare to her in magical power. And also, only thanks to her leadership, they were able to defeat the dragon. Reda imagined this scene and the happy elves. However, in order to save everyone, she took the dragon's fiery breath upon herself, and because of her pride as a warrior, since medicines and potions could only bring her temporary relief, she refused them in favor of other warriors. Reda noted that Hildegard, the best warrior in the settlement, was amazing. The elder added that she had very serious injuries, her entire body. Even if he could not heal her completely, if he could just ease the pain, he would be incredibly happy. Reda said he would do his best, after which the elder pointed to the room and said that she was behind the curtain. After that, he looked inside with the people and asked Hildegard if they could enter. There were two warriors standing next to her who had just finished bandaging her body and were very surprised by her arrival. Reda saw the body of a girl in a serious condition. She was lying on a huge leaf of a tree. Reda was surprised that this girl was the best warrior of the settlement. Hildegard opened her eye and turned to the elder. The elder immediately asked her not to get up. She became angry and asked the elder why the man had come to her, having risen to a sitting position with difficulty. The elder explained that everything was fine and that he had invited them himself because the young man could use restoration magic. The young man introduced himself as Radha Dixon, after which he approached Hildegard, and she began to move away through the pain and asked not to touch her. The protagonist put on gloves and said that he would heal her, after which he touched the elf's wounds. After using a restoration spell, the girl screamed that she couldn't move. The guy said that he would listen to all the complaints later. The people around her looked at this with concern while she screamed to let go and leave her alone. Reda asked her to move because the wounds would open, and she continued to ask not to touch. The guy said that if he didn't touch, he wouldn't be able to heal. The girl tried to kick him in the stomach, and Red asked how long she could resist. Falling to the floor from the kick, Red rubbed the back of his head, and Hildegard stood up from a large leaf on the tree. The bandages fell off her body, and those around her noticed that Madame Hildegard's wounds had disappeared, and there was no trace left of the burns. She looked at the man and asked if she remembered his name correctly, then hung over him and said that her flesh had melted so much that even her bones were visible, and he had figured out who he was so easily. Reda asked to stop, because now it is not so important. First he wished Hildegard to cover herself. The girls blushed deeply after realizing. The boy and the elder turned away, and she asked all the men to quickly leave the room. They rubbed their heads awkwardly and said that it seemed they had been kicked out. The elder also sincerely thanked her for the healing. Reda said that it was nothing special, he was glad that she was okay. The guy turned around and said that he still had a lot of magical power, so he would go and treat the other wounded. The elder was delighted and said that it would be great. The boy used healing magic on the warrior, and Mina stood nearby and helped. Also helping were the family of elves they met in the forest. Mina and Kate were very happy and enthusiastically helped them. After a while, all the places where the wounded had been were empty. The elder couldn't believe it, because there were 50 of them. Reda said that he was damn tired. The guy also added that he had been doing well lately, and his magical power seemed to be growing. It was as if the lid of the vessel had opened, and the magical power had begun to overflow the young man. Klaus approached the heroes and reported to the elder that all the potions were now in the warehouse. The elder thanked the archer for his work. Klaus then told Reda that thanks to him, they kept all the potions they bought. Reda was happy to hear that. The elder said that it was time for the boy to rest and asked Klaus if everything was ready. The man answered, of course. Edith said she hoped they would stay the night, as they were lucky their house was still intact. The hero thanked the elves and said that he would then spend the night with them. Mina also thanked him, embarrassing Keith. After that, they spent the night safely with the family. The next day, they returned to the tree and entered the arch at the roots, after which they apologized for disturbing her and, pulling back the curtain, saw Hildegard. She, seeing that the heroes had come, asked them their names again, waiting for them. Mina said that she was very glad that the elf's skin had healed. Hildegard said that she just wanted to say thank you. The elf was very embarrassed and apologized for not stopping kicking yesterday, explaining that they, elves, do not treat people very well. Reda asked permission to find out the reason, and Hildegard agreed to explain. She began by saying that there was less hostility now, but for a long time bandits kidnapped elves, and this was the most terrible thing she could tell. Hildegard says that elves have long lives, so they were used as servants by terrible people. They locked elves in the cellars of rich people, and there is no counting the number of times they tried to get them back. Of course, some elves never made it out alive, so they hate humans and keep their distance. Reda said understandingly that he was sorry. Hildegard looked away and added that, however, there are those who leave their villages and settle with people. In any case, she is grateful to Red, as are the other warriors who were healed, and from the bottom of her heart she says a big thank you to him. Reda raised his hands and said that he did what he had to do, so there was no need for thanks. The girl puffed out her cheeks and said that it was wrong to ignore someone else's gratitude, looking sternly at the guy. Reda awkwardly replied that he understood, so he would accept her gratitude. Hildegard sighed and said that in that case, good. She then turned to Mina and said that she had heard that she had worked a lot with Keith. She took the girl's hands and called her to her, saying that she wanted to give her a big hug as a token of gratitude, after which the girls hugged. She said that she didn't like people, but the two of them could call her Hilda, stroking Mina's head. Mina looked at her in surprise and said the elf's shortened name. Hildegard said that sounded nice and added something else, namely that she allowed Mina to call herself sister from now on. Mina smiled and thanked Sister Hilda. Reda looked at the girls with a smile as they happily stood next to each other and hugged. Hildegard remembered his presence and, looking, said that she was interested in one thing. Namely, she asked the hero how old did he think she was, as Mina was. The guy was surprised by the question. She said that the hero does not treat her like a child and has done so for quite some time, sighing sadly. And she really doesn't like this discrepancy because she grows very slowly, but she is already 316 years old. Mina was shocked by this information. After which, she said in surprise that she was very cool because she had lived so long. The elf nodded contentedly and asked if it was true that she deserved respect. And then he adds that 300 years is still not enough for elves, because the same elder is 1,000 years old. She tells that they say that the elder of the neighboring village, which is a month's walk away, is 2,000 years old. Shocked, Reda began to count 1,000, 2,000. Mina was surprised. Hildegard's ears twitched and caught Mina's attention. The girl asked her what was wrong. The elf explained that it seemed like someone was running here. Reda asked again and glanced at the entrance curtain. Hildegard expressed hope that this someone did not have bad news. A moment later, Klaus comes in and apologizes for interrupting the conversation, but the Black Dragon is here. Everyone screamed Black Dragon. Hildegard quickly began to pack, giving the order to Klaus to prepare to intercept. He understood the command and left. She then approached Reda and thanked him and Mina for the wonderful time, but she had to go fight. Reda asked Hilda to wait and said that she couldn't, because even though she was healed, the pain still remained, and asked if she still wanted to go. She taps him on the shoulder and reminds him that she is the best warrior in her village, and if she doesn't fight, who else will? The protagonist looked into her eyes and sighed heavily, thinking about his difficult decision. After which he said that he was going too, shocking Mina, who grabbed his hand to stop him. He explained to the girl that if he was on the battlefield he would be able to support them with magic and healing. Hildegard was not against it and said that it was fine, then they should go together. They pulled back the curtain into the room. Reda winked at Mina and said he would make sure everyone returned safe and sound and she could stay here and cheer for them. Mina said she would definitely be there. They walked out into the center of the elven village, where the rest of the warriors had gathered, after which Hildegard drew attention to herself with a shout. She stood on the hill and shouted that their enemy was the Black Dragon that had recently burned their village. She knew that they were afraid of him, and she told them that she was afraid too. However, if they ran away, who else would protect their village and their friends? Having inspired the warriors with their speech, they raised their hands and began to say that the pride of the elves is their arrows, so let's shoot him. They raised their bows and shouted that this time they would not lose. Victory would definitely be theirs. Hildegard, noticing that the black dragon had become visible and was approaching, turned and gave the order to the archers to take their places. The black dragon approached and looked at the village from the height of flight. He saw the armed army of elves perfectly. Radha Dixon, the main character, was amazed by his appearance and looked at the huge body of the dragon from below. After a short time, the black dragon was already right above the village. Archers stood in arches carved into the tree trunks and shouted that the battle was beginning. The archers began to fire at it. The dragon was severely wounded by a huge number of arrows, and holes appeared in its wings. He screamed loudly from the arrows piercing his body and spread his wings, trying to pull them out. Hildegard was shouting from below for everyone to continue shooting at him, and she was doing the same. The black dragon in the sky opened its mouth, baring its fangs, and looked down on the elf village from above. Hildegard shouted that he was using his breath, warning all the warriors in the village. She then used a spell and raised a barrier around the archers and herself, creating a large magic circle under her feet. The dragon, wounded by arrows, used fire breath on the barrier, and flames flowed around him from all sides. The protagonist Red wondered why it was so hot even though they had put up a barrier, wiping the sweat from his face. The dragon finished pouring fire from his mouth at them and noticed that the barrier was still not broken and all the elves were fine. He continued to fly around the village in a circle, gaining strength after his powerful attack on it. Hildegard, noticing this moment, gave the order that now was a great chance, so everyone should shoot at him. The black dragon, having gained strength, turned around and again prepared his breath, which the elves noticed and again put up a barrier to it. Reda, helping with the spell, asked the best warrior how many more times they had to repeat it before it was all over. The elf looked at Reda and apologized for dragging him into all this, even though he was a human. Reda responded understandingly that it was okay, since he had suggested it himself. The elves next to them were quickly replenishing their arrow supplies. Hildegard smiled, looking into Red's eyes, and said that she was still incredibly glad that he was here, her precious healer. And she added that when they defeat the black dragon, they will collect the reward from all the villages and send it to him. Reda noted that it is nice to be an adventurer, and he will look forward to this time with impatience. Hildegard shouted a new command that the dragon's breath was about to run out, so everyone needed to get ready. And on command, all the elves once again began firing at the dragon, which was gaining strength after the breath. Reda began to think about the black dragon, which had already been pierced by a considerable number of arrows, and this had caused some damage to it. However, whether they could really defeat him, his face expressed strong excitement and worry. After which he closed his eyes, clenched his hand and decided that he couldn't think about it because they would definitely defeat him. The black dragon used his hot breath. Reda wiped the sweat from his face and said it was hot steam. He used restoration magic on the elf girl. Then the young man looked around and shouted about it, asking if anyone had been burned. He thought that it was possible to get burned by hot air, not necessarily by being directly exposed to the breath. No wonder there were so many wounded. The black dragon was resting after using his breath, and smoke was visible from his jaws. Hilda said that everything was fine and he was exhausted. She ordered everyone to take up their bows and begin the attack. A huge number of arrows flew straight at the dragon. He flew, dodging the arrows, but suddenly one of them hit him right in the neck. Hilda smiled and said that they seemed to have irritated the dragon. Apparently, he didn't even realize what state his wings were in. After all, he was just an ordinary lizard. The boy asked about the wings. Then he turned his attention to them and said that the membranes on the wings were completely torn. Now he understood what the elves wanted. It was very surprising that he could still fly. Then, the boy noticed how the dragon began to inhale air and its belly swelled. Red asked what the dragon was doing. Klaus told the boy to take his hands in. It is the dragon's hidden weapon. Hilda shouted that the fireball was coming, so she ordered the elves to raise the barrier. The dragon opened its jaws, and its fangs began to crack. Then it fired a volley, releasing a fireball. At this time, Mina was sitting in the house and helping to sort the grass. In an instant, everything in the house began to shake. Mina was scared and asked what it was. The elf boy said that there was a lot of noise and vibration, but he told Mina not to be afraid because he could protect her. The girl came up to Mina and stroked her head, saying that everything was fine. Mr. Reda, along with Mrs. Hildegard and Klaus. She smiled and asked why the children didn't pray for them. The children agreed and began to pray. Mina wished for Reda to return alive. At that moment, the fireball that the dragon released crashed into the barrier. Hilda ordered the elf to raise the second barrier as well. She said that they had to use the double barrier to push back the fireball. Red added, rubbing his hands, that he had healed all the wounded, so he would also help them with the barrier and support it with magical power. Klaus said things were going great and they had a chance. The other male elf said they could push him away. Suddenly, Red noticed something and told Hilda to look at the dragon, whose belly was also swollen. The girl shouted that he was going to fire a second shot. The black dragon was going to burn everyone at the cost of his life. Then the black dragon releases his fireball again and his fangs break off completely. Hilda shouted that no dragon was so crazy. Then the dragon releases another fireball. Hilda shouted to Reed that he must run away from here immediately. The young man helped hold the barrier and said that he would not run away under any circumstances. More magic needs to be poured into the barrier, and if this continues they simply won't hold up. Then suddenly the barrier collapses and a fireball starts to approach the elves. Reda shouted that he couldn't die here. He simply couldn't afford it because he wouldn't leave Mina alone. He said he had to go back. Suddenly, a door opened behind the young man. Reda calls upon the spirit of the wind. Suddenly, behind him appears the image of a girl who looked very much like Mina, but already grown up. She pressed her hands into the boy's back, and the dark space opened up even more. The girl hugged Red and told him to begin. A black aura erupted from the passage. The youth summoned the spirit of the wind and commanded it to become his shield and blow away the enemy. Suddenly, a large gust of air surrounded all the elves. Hilda was frightened and asked what it was. Reda thought that the burden of his heart had disappeared, as if a shutter had been removed. His body is filled with magic. It seems that he is now capable of everything. The young man calls upon the spirit of the wind and uses the invisible blade of dance. He extended his hand and told the black dragon that he would shoot it down. The youth commanded the wind blade to cut the dragon. The huge wind blade cut off the dragon's wing. The black dragon was very surprised when he discovered that his wing had been cut off. The dragon began to fall down, straight to the ground. The monster fell straight to the ground and split it under its body. Then it stood up on its paws and let out a shrill scream. The monster looked angrily at the elves and at the young man who had cut its wing. Klaus happily said that his fangs were broken and he could no longer breathe fire. His wing was torn so he could no longer fly. He really was just a lizard now. Hilda shouted that they all had to attack the monster together now. Then all the elves used their magic and decided to chain the monster. They summoned plants in the form of vines that wrapped around the dragon's body. This was the magic of the chains of roots. Rita thought about it and thought that the elves used the roots of the great tree as tentacles. At that moment, Hildy noticed his thoughts. The girl was very surprised. She couldn't understand what kind of person Red was. You might think he was very unreliable, but he had the courage to fight the black dragon face to face. He was simply incredible. The girl stared at Red and thought about how he had amazing healing abilities, and he also knocked the dragon's breath out of his system and cut off his entire wing with one blow. Hilda smiled a little and thought with a shudder that she had never seen such people. A slight blush appeared on her cheeks. Just looking at Red made her so happy. She held out her hand and told the boy to get it over with. The girl asked the boy to pour his wind magic into her hands. The girl realized that her heart was beating very hard in her chest. The boy stood behind the girl and asked if he was doing the right thing. Hilda drew the arrow. The boy poured magic into the girl's hand holding the arrow, and also into the hand holding the bow. Hilda told him to pour more of his magic into her. Rita said that everything was fine and told Hilda to release the arrow. There was a huge flow of wind around the arrow. Hilda shouted at the dragon to open up. The other elves held him down and shouted that this dragon had destroyed their homes. The girl screamed that Hildegard Ederer and Radha Dixon would defeat him. The girl continued to hold the loaded arrow on her bow. She commanded the arrows of the whirlwind to fly straight to the target. Finally, the girl releases an arrow and it flies with great speed straight to the dragon's head. The monster looked into the face of his death. Eventually, the arrow pierced the dragon's head and it froze, and then the vines released its body and the dragon fell lifeless to the ground. Hilda and Rita continued to stand there in shock, looking at the monster. Rita asked if they had really defeated it. Hilda turned to the boy and said, agreeing that victory was theirs. Hilda raised her hand and said to the warriors that a victory cry should be heard in their ranks. Let their voices be heard through the forests and the cities. Let it be known that they, the true warriors, dwell here. Then a loud cry was heard. The villagers rejoiced and celebrated the happy event. The elves celebrated and talked about having their forest, their land, and their new friends. They drank to Red Dixon and Mina Dixon. The heroes sat at a round table and celebrated all this. Mina ate delicious food, and Reda drank with the other elves. The elf girl who was sitting next to the heroes asked Red how these drinks tasted and whether he liked them. The young man agreed and replied that this fruit wine was getting tastier every time. The girl smiled and said that it meant that Mr. Reda liked wine. She took the jug of wine and filled the young man's glass again. He scratched his head awkwardly and laughed. Mina added, smiling, that this juice and food, everything was very tasty. The elf, who was sitting next to her, handed the girl a plate of goodies and asked her to try this too. Mina thanked him for his kindness. Then Mina said that the holiday had come again. Reda smiled and said that it seemed that way. The elf youth asked about the holiday and where exactly it was, and also what holiday it was. Mina said that 10 days ago, in a place called Morlanea, there was a festival to celebrate the destruction of a pack of demonic wolves. The elf girl who was sitting next to Reda said, surprised that they had also dealt with the demonic wolves. Reda agreed and said that, like this time, not without help. The young man thinks and looks at the sky, saying that even though the black dragon has been defeated, things will get more difficult from now on. The elf girl stretches out her hand and opens her palm. She turns to Mr. Red and asks him to look at her hand. The young man asks if these are really the seeds of the fruit that was served with the meal. The elf girl closed her eyes. She called upon the spirit of the earth, and suddenly a magical seal appeared above the girl's palms. She asked the spirit of the earth to share its power with life. Suddenly, the seed sprouts and a small plant appears in the girl's hands. Mina told Mrs. Edita that it was very cool. The girl replied that they, elves, can grow plants. She smiled sweetly, and a tree began to sprout in her hands. Ms. Edita winks and adds that the big tree will only need about 3 years to grow to its full size. By summer, the rest of the trees will be lush. Then, a male elf approaches them and apologizes to Mr. Red for waiting. The boy is surprised and replies that he thought he would not see the elder, Hilda and Klaus. The boy replies that they were discussing the reward. The elder said that the village's savings were not that great, so the reward would be 1/3 of the sale price of the black dragon's carcass. Reda is very surprised and asks if it is really 1/3. He asks if it is too much. The elder replied that they had helped them a lot, so in fact, some even said that 1/3 would not be enough. Klaus said that the heroes should accept this, because it is for Mira's future. Red thought for a moment, and then bowed, saying that he would take care of her. However, their wind blades and air barrier surprised him greatly. He approaches the dragon and uses the storage skill. The youth adds that the carcass will take up too much space in the storage. The huge dragon carcass disappears. He says that, as for him, he will just keep the wing he cut off. He thinks that he would be full. The elder says that thanks to the young man, they didn't have to cut anything up, and they will be able to sell the carcass in the human city in its original form. Klaus adds that they will use the money for restoration. They will also consider the possibility of starting a collaboration with humans. Reda replies that he thinks that would be very cool. Hilda adds that this is not the only reward. The elder and Klaus are surprised and ask the girl what she is doing. Hilda says that the young man does not seem to have a wife. Reda does not understand what the girl means. Hilda points her finger at him and, smiling, says that Hildegarda Ederer will be his bride. All the elves who were celebrating at that moment were very surprised. Also, Reda himself opened his mouth and eyes in shock. Reda grabbed his head and asked what the girl was talking about. The elves began to ask Hilda if it was possible that she was not serious. They began to whisper and wonder if Hilda had really decided to follow in her older sister's footsteps, since she was now talking about marrying a human. The girl began to get irritated, and then turned to the elves and shouted about what he said and that they should come straight to her. At that moment, Mina approached the elder and tugged at his robe. Mina asked the man if Sister Hilda really had a sister too. The man stroked Mina's head and agreed. He said he thought he should tell Mina and the groom-to-be. Reda asked if he had heard correctly that he was already being called a groom. The elder said that Hildegard really did have an older sister. Everyone was happy to hear this. Elves rarely have children, and sisters are a rarity. That's why they are so special. However, 50 years ago, something happened. Hildegard was then 260 years old. Her older sister, against the advice of the tribe, ran away with her lover, who was a human. From then on, Hildegard's hatred for people grew stronger. She did not understand how any man dared to take her sister away from her. From then on, the elven law stated that elves should never interact with humans again. And so, in defiance of her sister, who abandoned her, Hilda devoted all her time to becoming a warrior. The girl snorted and said that love, romance is just nonsense, she is a warrior. Suddenly, Klaus mimicked Hilda. The girl got angry and said that he asked for it, then she activated the seal and took out a sword. The young man followed the girl and also took out his sword. He laughed and said that the girl would not be able to defeat her in close combat. Then the fight began. The other elves were happy and supported Hilda and Klaus. At this point, Red scratched his head and asked about the marriage and whether it was a joke. Mina noticed the young man's anxiety and awkwardly asked him if everything was okay. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly. There was a huge seal on the ground, and next to it was a harnessed cart. Kido asked Mina if they could play together next time. Mina agreed and said that she would look forward to that moment. Hilda told Reda that they would miss him, but he would not be alone for long because the girl would soon come to him. Reda smiled awkwardly and said that the girl had brought it up again. Hilda closed her eyes, smiled, and said that it was natural. Now she knew what her sister had felt. It was natural to want to live with the man she loved. Reda asked if the girl was serious about him being her lover. Hilda cried out, embarrassed, and asked how she could joke about that, since she really had fallen in love with the young man. Klaus was behind him, again mocking Hilda, saying that she was a warrior. Reda was trying hard to hold back his laughter. The next moment, Hilda punched Klaus right in the face. Reda sincerely sympathized with him. The village chief patted Red on the shoulder and called him dear groom. He said that if he didn't like the idea of marriage, he could force her out. Red laughed awkwardly, and at that moment Hilda kicked Klaus. Reda thought about sending Hilda away and realized that it was simply impossible. Then Klaus came up to them and asked if they were going to go already. Reda agreed and said that it was time for them to go. Finally, the harnessed leash moved straight to the center of the seal. The other elves wished their friends good luck. Reda and Mina also waved and said goodbye. Moving between the space, Red thought that in this adventure there were both dragons and elves. The guild and Mrs. Millet will be very surprised. After some time, the hero meets Mrs. Millet. The girl screamed loudly and asked how it could happen. They didn't say a word to her and simply disappeared. Reda thought that the girl burst into tears and began to scold them. The girl wiped away her tears and said that she was so worried. Mina also disappeared for 2 whole days. Mina and Reda bowed with apologies and Klaus stood next to them in a cloak. The girl said that she thought Red and Mina were in trouble. She thought that they were fed up with the way the guild treated them and went somewhere else. The same thoughts were running around in her head. They were all just awful. The girl grabbed the boy's hand and began to sob, thanking them for coming back to them. Suddenly, they were interrupted by Klaus, who apologized to the girl. He took off his hood and said that Red was out of town because he was saving them. The girl saw the stranger's pointed ears, and her vision suddenly became clouded. She was very surprised that an elf was standing in front of her. After a while, the girl started writing something down. She said that it turned out that Mr. Reda was a healer in the elven village and helped destroy the black dragon. She also apologized for causing such a mess. Reda smiled awkwardly and agreed. Then the girl said that the elves wanted to sell the black dragon to pay for the restoration of the village. Klaus nodded and agreed. Klaus then called someone and addressed Mr. Red. He also reminded the young man that he had the ability to store. The girl began to smile nervously and asked if the boy had brought the dragon there. Then she shook her head and asked herself what she was talking about. He couldn't put a dragon there. Red and the girl started laughing nervously, looking at each other. Klaus interrupted them and said that they brought it. He wants the guild to appreciate it. The girl was very scared. She shouted and told Red not to bother this dragon. She said with tears in her eyes that there were no people in the guild of this area who could appreciate this dragon. Klaus said that was a problem. Then Reda suggested that he go to the capital, although he didn't really want to. The girl asked them to wait and said that she would call people from the capital guild who could evaluate the black dragon. Red smiled innocently and asked the girl to do it then. Klaus asked her if she could tell how long it would take approximately. The girl thought about it and said that she thought 2 weeks would be enough. Then Klaus stood up and said that he was going back to the village then. Then he remembers something and says that their village decided to take this chance and establish relations with the people. He looks forward to working with them again. The girl says she understands and then shakes Klaus's hand. The boy adds that he will inform the elder and they will expect them in 2 weeks. The heroes then leave the Adventurers Guild. Klaus asks if he should buy some baked fruit for Katha and Edita. Reda laughs and tells Klaus that he is a pretty good father. Klaus tells the boy that he is not bad either. The boys then bow, and Klaus thanks Red for his help and bids him farewell. The boy reciprocates and adds that they will meet soon. Klaus strokes Mina's head and says that next time he will take Kat with him so that they can play together. The girl is happy and agrees. Then they say goodbye. Reda thinks about Klaus calling him father and looking at Mina. He thinks that they should have a proper talk. He starts to stroke the girl's head. Mina says it tickles and then asks the boy what's wrong with him. Reda said that when they return, they will have to apologize to Riggs and Melon. Mina smiles and agrees with the young man. After some time, already at night, everyone went to bed. Mina had a dream. The girl in the hood says that Mina only cared about her own happiness and she will never forgive her for that. Mina turned around and saw Red, who was completely devastated, with no emotion visible on his face. Behind him was a hooded girl with bloody tears coming out of her eyes. Suddenly, she pulled out a blade and plunged it into Red's neck. Mina only managed to tell her to stop doing it. Suddenly, Mina woke up from this dream. She got up from her bed and seeing Red next to her, she said that it was just a dream. The girl started crying when she took the young man's hand, so she cried all night sitting next to Red and holding his hand. The next morning, Nosha came to the Adventurers Guild to meet with Millet. After her report, Rita said that it turned out that there was no mention of anyone looking for Mina. The girl agreed and said that their headquarters in the royal capital had contacted the various branches. She bowed and apologized to the young man for not being able to help. Rita waved his hands and said that the girl did not need to bow because he was already grateful to her. After a while, Rita approaches Mina and apologizes for the wait. It seems they have no tasks today, so they can just take a walk. The girl smiles innocently and agrees with the young man. They walk around the city and go to a shopping street. The guys pass by a shop where juicy vegetables are laid out. Then they head to a sweet shop where a cute girl was calling. Mina was very surprised by the large number of cookies. Rita tastes the sweets and is surprised that they are very tasty. Mina also tastes the cookies and is surprised that they are very crispy. Rita looked at the girl and thought that things were going great. It seemed that Mina had been greatly encouraged by this walk. 3 nights ago she cried very hard and was constantly depressed. It seems that she had a bad nightmare that night. Sometime later, after the candy store, Red and Mina come to a bridge that stretches across a small river. Mina was delighted and told Red to look into the water. There were fish there and their scales were shining very beautifully. The young man agreed with the girl, looking into the water. He thought that no matter how he looked at it, he couldn't leave her alone. It would probably be better to tell her everything. Then the young man turns to Mina and says that he has an important conversation with the girl. Mina is surprised and asks again about the important conversation. The girl is very tense, looking at the young man. Rita said that he had never been married, so he didn't know how to raise children, but if the girl didn't mind, they could become a daughter and father. So, he wanted to ask the girl if she wanted to be his family. The young man stroked Mina's head. The girl began to cry, talking about family, and then asked if the young man was sure and if she could definitely become his family. Suddenly a voice was heard saying that of course she couldn't do that. It was the girl who had appeared in Mina's dream earlier. Rita covered Mina with his body and asked the girl who she was. The girl took off her hood and Mina looked at her carefully. She began to cry and, coming out in front of Rita, addressed her sister. The young man was very surprised because he had met Mina's sister. The girl, with an empty look, agreed and, waving her hand, said that she and Mina had not seen each other for a long time. The girl said that she was looking for Mina. The girl grinned and replied that she was glad that the girl was safe. Mina didn't understand what her sister meant. The girl started twirling some blade on her finger and said that, but did the girl really just say that she wanted to be part of his family? She threw the dagger straight towards the young man and said that she could not forgive such a thing. The boy dodged the dagger deftly. Rita asked the girl what she was planning. Mina's sister smirked and said that the boy seemed clumsy, but at least he had some reaction. Mina called her sister in a panic, but the girl got angry and told Mina to wait. First she beats this old man, and then it will be her turn. The girl was very surprised, but Red immediately covered her with his hand. He asked what the girl was saying. Mina's sister ordered him to shut up and then threw another dagger in his direction. Red fought him off with magic and asked if the girl was her sister. The girl agreed and said that her name was Runa. Then she deftly jumped off the roof of the building. Upon landing, the girl said that this was quite typical of the old man. She was Mina's sister. Rita thought that the way Runa was acting now was very strange. It would not be easy to deal with her because she was very strong. Rita told Mina to hide behind that bridge. The girl agreed and ran away. Rita then turned to Runa and asked the girl why she wanted to kill her little sister. The girl continued throwing daggers at the boy and told him not to call her by her name. The young man used magic and once again deflected the girl's dagger. However, one of the daggers flew right past the young man and cut through the armor on his shoulder. The girl smirked and said that it seemed like the boy's barrier was working slower than it should. At that moment, Mina asked her sister to stop attacking and asked her why she was doing it. The girl said that it was because Red was a bad person who wanted to take advantage of her and throw her away. She went into close combat and began to attack the young man. Red, dodging, asked again about taking advantage and asked the girl what she was talking about. Runa attacked the boy with a spin, but he was able to use barrier magic. The girl smiled and asked the boy if his magic had really become stronger after meeting Mina. Red was very surprised. At that moment, Runa jumped to the side and said that it was because he was using Mina's skill called Gift. The girl creates several magical seals, from which daggers begin to fly out. Reda asked about the gift and asked what else it was. Reda dodged it deftly. Runa continues and says that the young man knows that Mina's skill is to strengthen the nearest target. Red shook out his cape and said that now he understood why he had recently understood why he had been able to heal a dozen people, and why he had also managed to cut off a dragon's wing. Runa didn't understand what the young man was even talking about. At that moment, Mina distracted them and asked her sister to stop, because Reda is not a bad person. Runa created a seal and threw a dagger there right under Mina's feet. The girl shouted that she told her that the girl was next. Reda asked what Runa was doing, because she was your sister, because they were family. Runa said that they were family because the young man had noticed earlier how she had been watching them for several days. Runa says that she will therefore take care of her herself. First, she will save her from such a filthy thing as the young man, and then she will take her home. Therefore, the boy must die. She continued to throw daggers at him, and Red tried to dodge, but he still missed one attack. Mina got scared and called Reda. The young man, in order to calm the girl down, said that he was fine. Runa interrupted them and said that this is why she and Mina should go home together. If they return together, Runa is sure that they will both be forgiven. Mina began to scream and say that she does not want to go back there. Mina screamed and asked her sister what was wrong with her. At that moment, Reda started healing his shoulder and said that she didn't understand what was happening, but Mina clearly didn't want to go there. From the way Mina looked when he met her, he can imagine how horrible this place is that Runa calls home. Also, her words started to differ because earlier she said she would kill Mina, and now she calls her home. He says that the girl's words do not match her actions, so perhaps she herself is confused. Runa told him to shut up. She rushed to the boy and said that the last thing they needed was to listen to her. She swung her arm and ordered him to disappear. Reda held out his hand and asked Runa to stop and listen to him. Mina shouted at her sister not to hurt Dad. Suddenly, Runa stopped and did not attack Red. The girl cried and said that it was unfair. She dropped the dagger and asked why. However, suddenly her eyes went blurry and she grabbed her head, falling to the ground. Reda asked the girl what was wrong, but she shouted at him not to come near. Runa stepped back, then pulled her hood up. The girl's eyes began to change again. Reda didn't understand what had happened, and just now the girl's eyes were different. Then Mina ran up to the young man. She asked him if he was okay. Reda massaged his hand and told Mina that he was more or less okay. He then stroked the girl's head and asked her if she was hurt. Mina replied in the negative. Then, Mina turned to Red and said that when the boy asked if the girl wanted to become a family, she was so happy. She also wanted to be a family with the boy. However, her sister is also part of her family. Today, there was something wrong with her, and she was acting very strange. She started crying and asked the young man to save her sister. Reda hugged Mina and said that everything was fine and he would think of something. Some time later, already at night, Mina was sleeping in her bed and the young man was sitting at the table studying a book. He was thinking that he absolutely had to do something. Mina thought about how before meeting Reda, she lived with her sister in some underground organization. Life there was very difficult. It seems that she had a skill called Gift that enhanced the power of the nearest target, so she was kept in chains and forced to use her skill on the people of this organization every day. But she couldn't use this skill intentionally, and soon the organization lost interest in her due to her inability to activate her skill. So her only role was to be a hostage for her sister. Her sister had extraordinary physical abilities, so she was raised as an assassin. She was tasked with tracking down and killing people who were undesirable to the organization. At one point, she was forced to kill a high-ranking member of a rival organization. She had enough strength to easily escape from the organization, but since Mina was here, she didn't do it. If Mina had been alone, Runa would have been able to escape, but since Mina was being held hostage, on the day when all the guards got drunk, Mina managed to take the keys. Eventually, she freed herself from the shackles and escaped. She thought that this way, nothing would hold her sister back any longer. She wanted the girl to escape too. The next day, Reda and Mina went outside the city. The young man looked into the distance and said that this place would be suitable. He turned to Runa and asked if she was there. He asked her to come out quickly. The girl was surprised and suddenly showed up. Runa grinned and asked if the young man had really decided to hand Mina over to her quietly and peacefully. Mina turned to her sister. Reda interrupted her and said that everything was completely wrong and that he had come here today to cure the girl. Runa did not understand what the young man meant. She takes out her blade and says that the boy really decided to come and die. She asks if the boy really thinks that his barrier can withstand her real attack. Reda said that it was not like that at all, and that's why he would be a little more serious today. The young man calls upon the spirit of fire, and fireballs appeared all over the territory. Runa was very surprised and asked Red what it was. She said it was just amazing magic, but it would just kill him. The girl launched many daggers towards Reda and said that she would do it before he used them. Then the boy uses storage and all the girl's daggers flying towards him disappear. Runa was very surprised and Reda replied that it might be a little scary. Then Reda asked the girl to be patient for a while. He ordered the fireballs to burn the enemy and then called for a volley of fireballs. Fireballs began to attack Runa. The girl gritted her teeth and began to dodge them. A huge bunch of fireballs started shooting towards Rune, and then they touched the ground and exploded. The girl dodged and then threw her blade towards the boy, but he used the storage skill and took the flying dagger into his inventory. He then proceeded to shoot fireballs straight at Rune. The girl said that since throwing them was useless, she would cut off the boy's head in close combat. Suddenly, Runa appeared right behind the boy. Mina, who was holding on to Red's cloak, called out to her sister in fear. Reda looked back at that moment and activated the wind barrier. The rune hit the seal located on the ground. She was very surprised that the young man had lured her into a trap. The spell threw the girl straight into the air. Reda began to flex his fists and said that he could now grab the girl. He calls another skill and summoned chain shackles to shackle the girl. Runa started falling down and Red caught her. Mina breathed a sigh of relief. The girl started screaming and begged the young man to let her go immediately. Then she turned to Mina and told her what was going on and why the girl had left her. Mina said that was not the case at all. Runa said that she would take her home and kill her. Reda said that the girl had tried hard and now everything was fine. Runa did not understand what the young man was talking about. Reda didn't begin to explain anything to her, and then activated the seal on his hand and called upon the magic of release from control. He placed his hand right on the girl's face. Runa remembered the men who praised Runa for finishing off the head of that hostile organization. The man then took the Rod of Dominion and used it. He called out the girl's name, Runa Pierce, and then said that he commanded the girl to bring her sister, Mina Pierce, back home. She must also kill anyone who stands in her way. Runa was scared and asked what it was. Suddenly, her vision began to blur. She screamed. The staff in the man's hand shattered. He said that because of the runaway girl, he had lost his precious staff. The girl writhed in pain, and then her eyes changed their shade. After some time, the girl was already in the city and stood on the roof of a building. She smirked and said that she had found Mina, and now she needed to be brought home. Runa's inner voice screamed at him not to bring her back home. She was writhing in pain again and talking about how Mina needed to be brought back home. Her eye changed color again. Reda continued to hold his hand on the girl's face, who began to cry and call out for her sister, remembering how Mina smiled when she was next to the boy. At the very moment when Runa felt very bad, her second consciousness came to her, which was very glad that the girl had already come to her senses. Runa grabbed her head and didn't understand what was happening and why she was here. The girl noticed how Reda stroked Mina's head and said that, why only Mina and it wasn't fair. Some dark aura began to consume her. The girl said that it was not fair at all. Runa's other personality said that it was not so and that emotions should not take over. She asked for it all to stop because this dark aura was consuming her. It wasn't fair. Runa knew, looking at Mina, that the control couldn't be suppressed. She asked for someone to save her. The girl said with tears in her eyes that she would kill them. At that moment, Reda held his hand on Runa's face. The girl asked someone to help her. Reda shouted that he would save the girl right now. The spell continued to work. Suddenly, the dark shade on Runa's eyes began to crack, and then completely cracked. The girl looked up at the sky and saw a bright sun and a smiling Red. Runa started to cry. At that moment, Mina called her. Runa suddenly jumped aside and told Mina not to come near her. She, with tears in her eyes, said that she had said many bad things. Mina shouted that everything was fine and that she understood everything perfectly. Runa asked Mina for forgiveness, because seeing her happy here, she became very jealous and wondered why she was not happy, and after that she became very angry. Mina ran up to Runa and apologized to her sister for running away alone. Runa stroked Mina's head and told the girl not to apologize because she had done nothing wrong. Runa then turned to Red and told her to take care of Mina because she needed to go back. She should go back and say Mina is dead or something. Anyway, she'll come up with something. Mina panicked and asked her sister if she really said she would come back and think of something. Reda shouted that she couldn't do that and he wouldn't allow it. Rina said she had to, otherwise they would come and look for them. Reda said he would figure out how to get rid of them and would protect the girls. Runa clenched her lips and fist, shaking with fear. Reda had offered to let her live with him and Mina. Mina had told him she wanted to be a family. In that case, Runa is also part of their family. The girl smirked and said that the boy had suggested a strange thing. Reda grabs her by the shoulders and says that he doesn't care whether he proposed or not, that Runa saw happy. That's why he will make Runa happy. He asks her to become a part of their family. The girl was shocked and could not say a word. She began to cry and said that she agreed. In that case, she would rely on the young man. Mina threw herself at Runa. The girls hugged each other and started crying. Runa apologized to Mina for scaring her. Reda also hugged the girls and smiled. Thus, the heroes stood in the middle of the field and hugged. A light wind blew on their clothes. After a while, Mina was hanging on Red's neck and calling him daddy, giggling. Mina's friend said that Mina calls Red so affectionately and kindly. At this point, the man asked Runa what her name was. The girl replied that her name was Radha Dixon and that she was Mina's sister. She was also very pleased to meet you. Reda turned towards Runa and the girl asked what was wrong. Reda said that he was wondering what the girl would call him. Then Runa thinks, playing with her fingers. Then she thinks and smiles, saying that in that case, she will call him daddy. The man said that it sounded good. Runa replied that besides, there had already been a proposal, so what else could it be called if not that? The young man was surprised that Reda had proposed to her. Reda started to deny it and said that the girl wasn't old enough anyway. Runa stuck out her tongue and said that next month she would be old enough. Then Runa says that they should go to the guild already. Reda asked Runa since when she had such a character. Mina was glad that her sister was so cheerful. The man, watching them, said that it seemed like it would be even more fun now. The man laughed along with the young man. After some time, the heroes come to the Adventurers Guild to report everything to Mrs. Millet. Millet turned to Mina and said that she was very glad that the girl met her sister. Mina thanked the woman. Then Runa interrupted them, turning to Mrs. Millet. The girl asked Runa what was wrong. Runa said that they would return next month. She suddenly appears at the woman's and says that they will return to change her status from daughter to wife. Mrs. Millet is surprised and says that this is good. Reda was very surprised. Runa interrupted him and said that the young man himself wanted to make her happy by becoming her family, and she agreed. The girl became embarrassed and began to spin around. Then she asked if the young man had really forgotten about it. Mrs. Millet laughed and said that she was looking forward to it. Red, with tears in his eyes, realized that the situation was getting under their control. He asked Miss Millet where she was talking about. Finally, a week had passed since Runa and Mina became real sisters. Red, Mina and Runa were walking down the street of the city. Suddenly, Elliot called Red, calling him brother, and Tex asked if they really were walking together again. Reda greeted Elliot and Tex. He said that people got hurt during the cleanup and they were coming from there. Tex said that it had gotten a lot warmer lately, so monsters had come out. He told them to be careful. Runa winked and said that it was no big deal. Even if they got out, the girl would deal with them easily. She asked Red if that was true. Red agreed. Tex said that was encouraging. Reda added that, as a parent, he couldn't let Runa overdo it. Elliot said Reda didn't notice that Runa was so energetic. Then he grabbed the boy and said that they simply had to go to a great place and have a drink. Reda whispered that he would like to, but he didn't even know. It was scary to think what would happen if his daughters found out about this. Runa interrupted them and told him to hurry up because she was hungry, and Mina was hungry too. Elliot hugged himself and, shaking, said that he understood everything about the boy. Red laughed nervously and said that one was more terrible than the other. Elliot said that if Mina looked at him with a disapproving look and told him not to come near her again, that would hurt her the most. At this point, Mina called out to Red. He scratched his head and apologized to the girls, saying that he was on his way. Then the young man waved his hand to his comrades and left. Walking through the city, Runa approached the young man and asked him what a great place was. Reda even choked. He grabbed his head and said that a friend said that there were excellent alcoholic drinks there. Runa smirked and then whispered something to Mina while Red was not looking. Mina went to the boy and pulled his cloak. Mina was embarrassed and told Red that it was very indecent. The young man was simply stunned. Mina then turned to Runa and asked if she said that, okay. Runa laughed and then patted the girl on the head. Reda said that he really wasn't going there. After a while, Mina and the girl were sweeping the yard. They were wearing long dresses and their hair was covered with a light scarf. At this point, Runa and the man were preparing food. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a girl who said that she had heard that a man named Radha Dixon was staying with them. At that moment, the young man was sitting in the room at the table and studying the book, applying magic in practice. Suddenly, he heard a stomp. Mina and Runa entered the room. The girl said that Red had a guest and that it was a girl. The young man scratched his head and asked who it was. Mina said that she forgot to ask the name. Runa giggled and asked if it could be their dad's ex-girlfriend. Reda turned around and said he was going to be mad. Runa laughed and asked if that was true. Red came down from his room. The girl noticed him and was very happy when Red actually came down. This girl was a former member of Red's group. Reda was very surprised when he saw Aisha Alro. He asked the girl what she was doing there. The girl sighed and, folding her arms across her chest, told the young man that he had better not ask. When she learned that Gil had kicked the boy out, she too left the Black Wolves. Red was surprised and asked if the girl had really done that, since she had only recently joined them. Aisha remembered Gil's words, who said that if she was not happy with something, she could get lost. Aisha conveyed these words to the young man and said that she left after these words. Runa frowned and said that the healer would not have been kicked out of the group just like that, and what could the leader have been thinking about? Then Runa had an idea and said that the boy had been using his hands and talking to girls. Reda turned around and said that it was nothing like that. In fact, Nukto and Rosalie liked Gil. Mina asked what about Aisha. The girl became embarrassed and asked if it was really about her. The girl started talking about how Reed had someone there at the time. The young man covered Aisha's mouth with his hand and told her not to say another word. More importantly, the young man asked why the girl was there. Aisha said that she had been traveling alone for a while, but it was not profitable. Then she saw the migration sheet, and that's how she ended up in Amrus. If she was seriously injured, the losses would be enormous. Here she joined the civil police, and now she works as a gate guard of a mansion of one owner. It is very good that she stayed here. Reda said that Aisha is now a guard. That's great, and he thinks that the police pay is stable. Aisha said that she wants to give back to the village that raised an orphan like her. Then the girl smiles and says that she heard incredible rumors about the young man. Is it true that he slew a dragon in the elven settlement? Runa smiled nervously and asked if she had heard correctly about dragons and elves. Mina smiled and said that Dad had tried very hard. Aisha was surprised and said that she had already begun to think that it was just a person with the same last name, but it turned out to be true. Reda laughed nervously, scratched the back of his head, and then said that he was just as surprised. Aisha and Runa were suddenly very surprised. Aisha folded her arms across her chest and said, exhaling, that unlike Gil, the young man had achieved a lot in 3 weeks. Reda asked if the Black Wolves couldn't raise their ranks to B. Aisha said with a straight face that it wasn't like that at all. Gil and Gilliam became bandits and are now wanted. Red was very surprised and asked why this was so. Aisha was surprised and said that she had a chance to talk to Rosalie. Aisha learned that the girl had left the Black Wolves. Rosalie also informed her and said that Nikto had also left the Black Wolves. Even after Gil and Gilliam kicked out Red, they didn't change their tactics or equipment. Because of this, a lot of money was spent on treatment, and in the worst case, there was a possibility of death. Gil was especially reckless and stupid. He attacked the monsters, saying that he could handle it without Red. He was always shouting that he could cope without him. The girls thought that the young man was simply obsessed, and it was difficult for him to admit it. Aisha asked Rosalie if she didn't love Gil. The girl replied with a smile that she had in the past tense, but now he was just hopeless. Aisha told this story to Red and said something like this. In addition, they had to buy healing consumables. In the end, they took out a loan and ran away. That's how they became bandits. Runa smiled nervously, and Mina and Reda were shocked. Reda scratched the back of his head and was quite depressed. He said that if he recalled, Gil had been a troublemaker for a long time. However, he had always been a smiling and kind guy. Mina turned to the young man to somehow cheer him up. The girl said that he was powerless to change anything here. Aisha said that this was also true. Then Aisha changed the subject and said that she was curious about something. She looked at Mina and Runa and asked who those cute girls were next to him. She smirked and asked if the boy had really kidnapped them. She could report it to the police. Reda shouted and said how could the girl even think about it. Aisha laughed and said that it was just a stupid joke, so the boy should not worry. Runa was embarrassed and said that he stole her heart. Aisha began to laugh. Aisha said that her name is Aisha Alro and she is a former member of Red's group. The girl says that she is very happy to meet Runa and Mina. Mina smiles and says her name is Mina Dixon and she is Red's daughter. Runa winks and says she is Mina's sister and Red's wife and her name is Runa Dixon. Aisha immediately turned to the young man and said that she did not understand anything at all. Rita said that neither of them were her real daughters. Then Aisha pointed to another girl and said that she was also very cute, and then asked who she was. The girl said that her name was Mealing and she wanted to hear their stories. The man apologized. Aisha realized that Mealing was his daughter. Mina said she wanted to hear about Red's adventures too. Aisha asked the boy if he minded. Red said he didn't mind. Not that there was anything interesting about his life as an adventurer. He is embarrassed to tell about it himself, so he would be very grateful if Aisha would help him. Runa said she would be especially interested to hear about Red's love affairs. The young man told Aisha not to talk about them. Aisha said she would start with the story of how Reda saved her. The boy thought that something was wrong with him. Aisha said it all started with their meeting. Suddenly, Aisha shouted and said that she had completely forgotten why she had come here. Her master had ordered her to find a healer named Radha Dixon and bring him. Reda was very surprised. The girl said that she had already discussed everything in the guild, so there was a carriage waiting for them outside. He should go with her right now. Reda didn't understand what the girl was talking about or which master she was talking about. After some time, Reda with Mina, Runa and Aisha were riding in a cart. Reda asked Aisha what business her master had with him, that even they had prepared a cart. Aisha said who knows. She herself doesn't know the boy anymore. She was just told to get her in order. She can only assume that this is confidential information. Suddenly, Mina leaned out of the window and asked Aisha what kind of person her master was. The girl replied that he was a little strange. The girl did not understand what Aisha was talking about. Aisha smiled and said that if he was considered an aristocrat, he left the family estate and built a city right on the border. Reda asked if that wasn't great. Aisha added that he always went out on patrol with the police. He helps the dwarves build outer walls or dwellings. Runa said he was really strange. Aisha said she thought maybe he had met Reda somewhere. After some time, Mina saw a large mansion. Aisha agreed and said that this was the owner's mansion. However, before that, she wants to do something. The carriage continued to move, but suddenly the carriage stopped, and the heroes did not understand what happened. Runa sighed and said that they had guests. Reda asked the girl what she meant. The young man looked out the window of the carriage and asked what was going on there. Suddenly, there were many people in front of the carriage who ordered the driver to stop. He said that they themselves were kind, since they really decided to stop. The man held his sword out in front of him and told them that they might as well be kind enough to die. Aisha took out her weapon and asked if the man even knew whose cart this was and where it was going. The man frowned and asked why it mattered to him, since there was a healer in the cart. Suddenly, a voice was heard asking if they really needed a healer. It was Runa, who was already standing on the roof of the carriage. The girl said that their answer would be a refusal. Rita was surprised, and Aisha started yelling at Runa about what she was doing because it was dangerous. Suddenly, Runa disappeared from the roof of the cart. Suddenly, an unpleasant sound was heard. Aisha turned around and saw Runa there, who had killed the man with the sword with her blade. The man fell unconscious. Aisha was very surprised and asked what had just happened. Runa stood there like an innocent child, tossing her curved dagger in her hand. A man appeared next to her, insulted the girl, and then swung his sword at her. At that moment, Runa threw her dagger straight at his neck. The men did not understand who this girl was. The three of them attacked her at the same time. Runa jumped with ease and took out all three of them by hitting them in the back of the head. The other bandits were surprised again, and Runa turned to them with a demonic smile. She started to trash the men left and right. Aisha said that recently there was a rumor that a very strong girl who exterminated monsters joined the police and adventurers. This girl is a silver-haired blonde with dark skin. Could it be that they were talking about Rune? Aisha shouted at Runa not to kill them, they just needed to be detained and handed over to the police. Runa smiled, holding her leg over the bandits' neck, and said that they were simply unconscious. After a while, all the bandits were tied up and lying on the ground. Runa ran up to Red and smiled as if asking for praise. The boy and Mina patted the girl on the head. Rita said that Runa was good, but she should not overdo it. Runa giggled. Aisha interrupted them and said that the police would deal with the rest and that it was time for them to move on. Rita and the girls got into the carriage and set off. Then the young man saw the owner's mansion, so big and majestic. Mina called her sister to look at this beautiful view. Runa was very surprised as there were many houses in the city. They also saw the mustachioed dwarf's shop there. Rita told Aisha that they seemed to prefer the scenery of the city over the mansion. Aisha laughed and agreed with the young man. After some time, they arrive at the mansion of Aisha's master. They are met by a stately man. He greets Mr. Red Dixon and the young ladies. The man says his name is Maisel, and he is a butler. The man invites the guests to enter the house because the owner is waiting for them. The heroes walk down a long corridor and then enter a room with a huge door. They are met by a young man and a girl. The young man spread his arms and said that he was happy to see Red Dixon. The young man says that he is the master of the city of Amurt, and his name is Tida Amurt Rodenbert. The girl standing next to him says that her name is Gabrielle Rodenbert. Rita shakes the boy's hand and says that it is nice to meet him and that his name is Radha Dixon. The girls also introduce themselves and say their names. Then they sat down on the sofas. Tida said that they had been informed of what had happened. Tida and Gabriel bow. The young man said that the guests should allow them to apologize first for what had happened. Runa said she was surprised, because the nobility bowed their heads to the commoners. It seemed like they were worth something. She also said that Tida was very strange, just like she had been told. Rita politely asked them to raise their heads, as they accepted their apologies. Tida smiled and thanked Mr. Red Dixon for coming to his estate. The young man seemed kind enough. Then Rita, putting his hand on his chest, asked Mr. Rodenbert why he invited them to his estate. The young man smiled and said that the guests did not need to be so formal, so they could simply call him Tida. The locals call him that. Rita agrees and calls the hero Mr. Tida. Then, Tida's face becomes serious and he says that before the boy's question, he suggests getting straight to the point. He wants him to heal his sister Valerie. He says that it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. He offers them to go through and they will lead them. Then Mr. Tida turns to Maisel. The butler agrees and leads the guests of the estate behind him. Then they go up to the back room of the manor. Mr. Tida says that his sister's room is further down the hall. Then, the butler Maisel turns to Rune and Mina and tells them to go with him. They prepare them some delicious tea with sweets. The girls are very surprised and ask what the man means. Gabriel intervenes and says, confused, apologizing that this is not something one would want to show little girls. Runa puts her hands behind her head and agrees. Mina also agrees and wishes her dad luck. The young man waves to the girls. Then Rita asks what condition their sister comes in. Mr. Tida was at a loss for words, but Gabrielle interrupted him and said that it happened a year ago. At that time, they were in a remote residence near a lake and were having dinner with the whole family. Everyone was happy then. However, after that, suddenly, a terrible flame burst out of her body. Mr. Tida said it looked as if she was engulfed in flames, but it sent her into a long coma that has now lasted a year. Rita asked if the girl had been examined by a doctor. Mr. Tida sighed and agreed that she had been examined by doctors. He also said that even the capital's healers had come, but they had been powerless. And just recently, the other day, Mr. Tida learned that an unusual healer had appeared in the Adventurers Guild. Then the young man knocks on the door and tells his sister Valerie that they are going to her room. Rita enters the room first. He apologizes to Mrs. Valerie for intruding. The girl lies silently on the bed. The young man was very surprised by what he saw. A fragile girl was lying on a huge bed, and 2 maids were standing next to her bed. The young man would have thought that she looked like she was sleeping innocently. Then Gabrielle came up to her and, taking hold of the blanket, asked Valerie for forgiveness. The girl removes the blanket, and Rita sees Valerie's entire burned body. She was wearing very light night clothes that barely touched her body so as not to injure the burns. Rita asked Mr. Tid if he could examine her. The young man agreed. Rita approached the girl and apologized to her. He says his name is Radha Dixon and he came to heal her. The young man wondered if these were really burns, since there was no inflammation on the body. He touches the dark spot and uses healing magic. The boy thinks that these could be scars, then the dark spots disappear. Reda was surprised and wondered if this was enough. He didn't understand why the others hadn't been able to heal her yet. Suddenly, the young man notices that the dark spots are shrinking again. The place that was previously healed is covered with dark spots again. Mr. Taida put his hand on his head and said that it was just like that. Healing was ineffective here. Gabrielle also sighed and said that no one could figure out what kind of burns these were. Reda thought for a moment and said that her body suddenly caught fire. It also resisted her treatment and the wounds on this body did not heal. These are not simple burns or any wounds. This is something that is artificially caused. Then the young man thinks that he should try something. A magical seal appears on his hand. He then moves it across his face and uses the detection skill. A seal appears on his eye. Mr. Taida asked the boy why he used the detection skill. Reda agreed and said that adventurers often use this kind of magic. It is a basic magic for detecting traps or identifying objects. If there is a concentration of magic in a certain place, the color will be blue. If it is a blessed thing, the color will be white. It is something like an aura. The young man looked at Valerie's aura and saw that its color was black. Black means curse. Reda realized that she was cursed. Mr. Taida was very surprised and asked if she was really cursed, but he did not understand why she was cursed. Gabrielle was very afraid for Valerie. Mr. Taida swayed and put his hand on his face. He doesn't understand what they should do now. Gabriel says that they should go to the capital's Healers Guild for advice. Mr. Taida tells the girl that she is right, but what can healers do about this curse? Reda interrupted them and asked Mr. Taida to wait. The young man is distracted and apologizes to Reda. He says that he will definitely pay for his services. The young man says that he doesn't mean that at all. He just learned the spell and hasn't used it yet. Reda says this cautiously. The young man adds confidently, asking Mr. Tid if he could try casting a curse removal spell. Mr. Taida was very surprised. He grabbed Red by the shoulders and asked him if he really had such magic. The boy agreed. Then Mr. Red agreed and asked the boy to use it. Reda approaches Valerie and says that he does not know if this spell will help, but until specialists from the capital arrive, he will try to ease the girl's suffering. Gabriel and Taida took each other's hands and looked at the young man with hope. Reda stretched out his arms and closed his eyes. He called upon the spirits of light and commanded them to drive away the evil force. The young man opened his eyes and cast the curse removal spell. Suddenly, a huge shining magic seal appeared under the girl's body, and there was a shining sphere at the girl's hands. At this time, in the girl's mind, she was surrounded by a powerful flame. The girl was crying because she was very hot and dark. She cried and thought about what she heard someone's voice. She couldn't see or hear anything. Also, Valerie couldn't understand how long she had been there. The girl begged at least someone for help because she was very hot. Suddenly, the dark space above the flame began to crack and split. The girl saw it. In the real world, she woke up and cowered, screaming for her brother to help her because now the girl is incredibly hot. Mr. Chida shouted that Valerie woke up. At this point, Reda turned to Mrs. Valerie and said that everything was fine. He was gradually dispelling the curse. The girl got scared and asked him who he was. The main character answered that his name was Radha Dixon and he was a healer. The girl saw her brother Tid and sister Gabrielle nearby, hugging each other and watching everything. The girl smiled with relief. Taida was very surprised when Valerie's dark spots began to disappear. The girl at that moment was sitting on her bed and holding on to Red's clothes. The young man was finishing his spell. Gabrielle cried and smiled as the spots on the girl's body disappeared. At that moment, Reda told Mrs. Valerie to hold on because he would do everything in his power. The girl smiles and agrees, then says that she will try. The young man continued to use his magic. Mrs. Valerie wanted to say something to Reda but suddenly screamed in pain again. Reda thought that it was getting harder and his mana was running out. He thought that he wouldn't be able to cope and finish the purification. Then again, some aura surrounds the young man and he thinks that he can't stop. He is filled with a devastating feeling. A very bright light forms between the young man and Valerie. Reda poured in the last bits of mana and the shining light created a vortex, fluttering the hair and clothes. Lord Taida and Gabriel covered their faces from this bright light. Taida didn't understand what this bright light was. After a while, the light dissipated and Reda and Valerie were sitting on the bed. Reda turned to Mrs. Valerie and was about to say something, but the girl interrupted him and said that everything was fine. The young man began to fall and said that he could not do it anymore. Reda fell right into Mrs. Valerie's lap. The girl was a little embarrassed. Mr. Taida asked the girl how she was feeling. The girl stroked Red's head and said that she was fine, thanks to Mr. Red. Reda plunges into memories where Nikto told the young man that he must learn to control the mana in his body. The young man thought about it. He then used the wind cutter and cut the monster. Nikto told the boy that he had done everything correctly. She added that it can be compared to alcohol. A young man must skillfully suppress it and not spill anything extra. If you pour too much, the glass will overflow and the alcohol will spill and the bottle will be empty. The young man smiled and understood what the girl was talking about. Nikto used magic to show the boy what she was talking about. The girl called upon the spirits of flame. She said that if you compress magic, something terrible will come out. She called the flame spirits again and used them on the enemies, blowing up the area. Red was very scared then. At that moment, Gil asked Nikto if she and Reda really wanted to kill them or if they wanted to eradicate the goblins completely. Nikto asked the young man if he understood. Reda smiled and said that he would try to remember her words. Nikto agreed and said she was sure he could handle it. Reda touched his head and asked if it was a dream. He said that he lost control and apparently lost consciousness. He still can't cope with what he was taught earlier. Suddenly, Mr. Taida turned to him, wishing the young man a good morning. He was sitting on a chair next to the bed, reading a book. The young man said that Reda had finally woken up. The young man was surprised. He turned around and saw Mr. Teed, who was about to get up and apologize for taking up their bed. Taida told the boy not to worry about it, because he had saved his sister, and now Mr. Taida was Reda's debtor. The boy added that Valerie had been tested with detection, and the curse had lifted. Reda replied that he was glad to hear it, and then asked Mr. Tid where his daughters were. The young man replied that Mina and Runa were in the bathroom. Valerie had been very insistent about this. At this point, Gabrielle told Valerie to tread carefully, as she had just recovered. Valerie agreed and thanked her sister. Then the girls came into the bathroom and were very surprised. Mina smiled and said that the bathtub was very big. At this point, Aisha shook her head and asked why she was even here. She was still on duty, and they were all in such a crowd. Valerie turned to Aisha and said that she had heard that she and Mr. Reda had traveled together before. Aisha agreed, frightened. Runa thought at that moment that it was okay if it was Ms. Gabriella, but now Valerie was calling Dad by his first name. She had a very bad feeling about this. Valerie said that the bath was very nice, and it was such a wonderful feeling. Runa agreed. Aisha interrupted them and asked Valerie if there was a reason why she called them all. Runa was scared and wondered why Aisha asked her. Valerie smiled and replied that of course she had a reason. She wanted to ask the girls about Red. Gabriella was surprised and said that this was really it. Valerie was embarrassed and agreed, saying that it was love at first sight. Runa was beside herself with rage. Runa approached Mrs. Valerie and said that she was from the aristocracy. The girl believed that she should not fall in love with her commoner father. Valerie said that everything was fine. Gabriel added that as a reward, Taida was even ready to marry her to him, but the girl stopped her. Runa said nervously that such stories are common. A woman falls in love with her healer and then suffers because of it. Mina came to her senses and said that this was the same case, but it was with Runa. The girl jumped up and asked Mina whose side she was on. The girl smiled sweetly and said that she was on her dad's side. Valerie smirked and said that everything was clear now. She said that in order to avoid regrets in the future, they should tell her about Red. Mina said fact 1, that Dad is very kind. Aisha suggested fact 2, that Reda has always been kind, although it was difficult to rely on him before and now he seems to be quite popular. Runa suggested fact 3, but said she had no idea and maybe it was kind. Valerie said that after receiving such feedback, she immediately wanted to be their mother. The girl extended her hand and said that she was counting on Mina and Runa. Runa saw in the girl the one who declares war. She squeezed Valerie's hand tightly, saying that the girl was asking for it. Valerie laughed nervously. Aisha wondered if she had understood everything correctly. At this time, Reda was walking with Mr. Taida. He said that thanks to the master he was able to cool down. Taida said, laughing, that he was proud of his hot spring. Then the young man asked if the girls were really still in the bathroom. Taida suggested that the young man have a drink together for now. Reda agreed. After a while, 2 girls came and told Mom and Dad that they were home. Taida, Gabrielle, and Valerie greeted the girls. Suddenly, the girls were very surprised that Valerie was there. They started asking them how she woke up and how she felt. The girl said that everything was fine now. Then, the butler drew his attention and said that the girls should greet the guests first. They approached Red, Mina, and Rune. The blonde girl said her name was Oro Amurt, and the dark-haired girl said her name was Nero Amurt. Taita told Reda that these were his daughters. They wanted to open a school this spring, and they were visiting for experimental purposes. Reda said he was very happy to meet the girls, and Tide said school was great. Then Gabrielle interrupted and said they would finish with greetings and move on to dinner. After a while, everyone was sitting at a large table. Valerie offered Mr. Reed to taste this meat. The young man thanked the girl for her concern. Runa said that he couldn't eat only meat, so he should eat vegetables too. The young man agreed and thanked Runa. Valerie told Mr. Reda that dry food would dry out his throat, so he should drink some wine. Reda apologized to Valerie. Then he looked at Mr. Tid and thought in his mind about what was happening, and Tid didn't understand how it all came to this. Mina said that they get along so well. Then Valerie said, apologizing for starting during dinner, but she has something to talk to her brother. Mr. Taita asks the girl what happened. Valerie said that before she gets married, she would like to date Reda, so the girl asks her brother if he is against it. Rita was surprised and asked the girl what she was talking about. At that moment, Runa jumped up and looked at her angrily. She thought about Valerie openly stating her desires, but she would not let her get in the way. Runa was embarrassed and told Valerie that Rita had already proposed to her, so was she sure yet? Rita was scared. He told Runa that he had not said that to propose. Valerie said that it was precisely because she had such a cute rival that she decided to ask permission. Mr. Taita said he was not against it, but what does Rita really think? Rita said he knows nothing about Valerie and he is not the best companion anyway. Besides, he is over 30. Valerie started crying and asking what they should do, since Mr. Reda had rejected her. Rita said that was not what he meant. Runa said that the boy had her, but Rita shouted that Runa was actually his daughter. Mr. Taita interrupted them and said that in that case, maybe they should be friends first. He asks Rita what he thinks. Rita said that he is not against friendship and it would be an honor for him. Runa said that there is no need for that. Taita tells the boy that in that case he entrusts Valerie to him. The boy agrees. Then Valerie remembers something. Gabriel turns to the girl and asks her what is wrong. Valerie said that she thought of something. If Rita becomes her friend, then her brother will stop being lonely and he will also have a friend. Mr. Tita was surprised and shouted that he was not lonely. The next day came. Everyone came out of the house and began to thank Red for the visit and the dinner together. The children of the Amurt family also said goodbye to Mina, saying that they would see each other again. Reda followed and they set off. Runa thought about the curse. Even among healers, the removal of curses is quite rare. So rare that such people can be called messengers from God. The spell puts incredible strain on the caster. Runa herself has also heard that the curse is dispelled within a few days, or even weeks. Even if they did everything using Mina's blessings, it would have taken them at least half a day. In the worst case, nothing would have happened at all. And also those same fireballs that she had already seen when Red was casting a spell. Who is this really? Right now, this is the question that was spinning in the girl's head. Mina turned her head and leaned towards Runa. She saw that her sister seemed to be floating somewhere in the clouds. Runa smiled, coming to her senses, and then said that she realized how incredible their daddy was. Mina began to cheer and raised her hands slightly. With a wide smile on her face, the little girl agreed with her older sister, adding that their father was something special. Runa hugged Mina, stroking her head, and then said that she was also incredible, just like her father. Mina began to laugh loudly, and Runa continued to smile, remaining completely calm. Rita was so warm and kind when he saved her. She remembered that day very well. No wonder Mrs. Valerie felt the same way and started making eyes at him at dinner. 2 days later, when they were already home, a blonde girl appeared on the threshold. It was Valerie. She smiled and asked if Mr. Reda was home now. Runa noticed the girl and Valerie's visit immediately threw her off balance. She turned around and, holding back all her emotions, asked what Mrs. Valerie was doing here. Valerie smiled even wider, then moved her hand to the side, pointing somewhere. At that moment, Mr. Taita came in, holding up his bandaged hand. He said that he was slightly hurt. They went up to the master's room and there Rita was able to heal him. He asked how Taita had come to this. The guy answered that he had decided to teach a lesson to the thugs who had attacked the healer. Valerie kept spinning around and looking at Red's room. The healer himself asked Tid in surprise if he had been able to find out anything interesting about the bandits. As soon as Taita began his story, they heard screams on the first floor. The scream belonged to an adult man who demanded that a doctor be brought to him as quickly as possible. He asked very brazenly. Rita realized that someone wanted to see him. He himself began to wonder who this man with terrible manners was. He turned to Taita and said that he should go out. Red was slowly descending the stairs, calling Riggs. The healer wanted to know what had happened while he was treating Mr. Tid. Suddenly, some object rushed towards Red himself. The healer managed to dodge, ducking to the side. It was some kind of glass with liquid. It hit the wall and splashed on the floor. Reda looked ahead, dumbfounded. There were several men in front of him. One of them, who was shouting, immediately pointed his finger at Red, asking if he was really a healer. He ordered the guy to quickly run to him and heal him. Reda asked the reason why he should obey. One of the insolent man's escort shouted at Reda not to speak like that when addressing Munza. Munza LG is the owner of the largest trading company, which he named after his family. Munza looked at the healer intently, assessing his status. The other man turned to Munza and said that he was corrupt. Munza got angry and told Reda to start treatment quickly. He didn't care about the price and was ready to endure any pain. Rena walked up to the man and said that they would discuss payment later. Now the healer wanted to see the wounds that the merchant wanted to heal. Munza began to open his cloak. The man took off his outer clothing and threw it aside. His entire body inside was covered in black spots. Only his head, shoulders, and neck were unharmed. Rita thought they were burns. Munza kept rushing the healer. He also said that before coming here, 2 of their healer guilds had already examined him. Afterwards, he said that in this city it seems they are incompetent. He really hoped that Rita would be able to cope. The healer said that the burns were received about a couple of days ago in the evening. The merchant's assistant said that it was so. All this was sudden for them. Afterwards, the assistant asked if Randa could help his master. Randa became silent and thoughtful. It seemed that he understood the reason why Munza received his wounds. Rita began to remember a theory he had studied in books a few years ago. The curse removal spell, if it had worked correctly, worked like this. Rita turned to the owner of the trading company and said that the curses were designed so that if they were dispelled, they would return to the caster. Munza looked up in surprise. The assistant immediately shouted, saying that Rita was behaving without respect. The healer had no right to behave like that and mock their boss. Suddenly, the girl's voice was heard. It was Valerie, who was slowly descending the stairs. The girl looked at the merchant and said that she thought so. She guessed that it was Munza who cast that curse. Munza, when he saw the lady, started screaming even louder. He pointed at Valerie and screamed that she should be in a coma now because of the curse. At that moment, someone else was coming down the stairs. It was Taida. The boy said that he had only learned about the curse the day before yesterday. Munza covered his face with his hands, feeling fear. Taida added that the merchant could no longer hide. Taida came closer and closer to Munza and began to tell him that the bandits who had attacked his cart had told him something when they were defeated. They had named their employer. Valerie began to shake her head sarcastically, saying that the man would no longer be able to justify himself. Mosna began to sweat and looked down. Munza understood perfectly well that he had to somehow get out of this stupid situation. The man began to assess the situation, the owner of the hotel, 3 little girls, and the young members of the Amurt family. The merchant began to laugh and then turned to Taida. The man said that the young gentleman had apparently shown up without any protection. Now he would regret walking around the city so brazenly. Munza shouted for his men to start killing everyone in the house except the doctor. His gang of bandits immediately stormed the inn, waving their weapons. Rita reacted rather quickly. He immediately mentally commanded the spell to bind them. The magical chains shot forward and began to wrap around the merchant's thugs. Runa quickly rushed forward and kicked Munze with her foot. He got a heel right in the face and rolled out of the hotel in his underwear. Runa took out her blade and approached the merchant. She said that they were all very lucky, because she did not want to stain anything with blood. Munza began to turn around, looking for his guards. All his guards had long since been disarmed and were lying not far from their master. Valerie stepped forward and began to ask the merchant the reason why he had cursed her. Valerie suddenly lost her temper and began shaking the man, demanding a quick explanation. Munza was very scared, not understanding what to do now. Suddenly he began to answer and immediately said about the offer of school. He repeated that it was the school that had interfered with his trade. Runa and Valerie looked at him in surprise. He thought that this was too small a reason. A man's voice was heard nearby, saying that everything was clear to him. Then he slapped the merchant hard in the face, causing his eyes to roll back. Munza lost consciousness. His body fell face down and the man began to raise his blade behind his back. Rita shouted his name. It was Tix X. The man smiled and then began to grab the bastard by the neck. Tix said that he understood that his protection was no longer needed here. Taida laughed and said that he understood correctly. Tix winked and began to move Munza's body away. After that, they tied up everyone else with thick ropes. All of Munza's assistants were also unconscious. Tix said that they would take them away. Taida added that he would have a few questions for Munza. They loaded everyone into a special wagon, which was covered with bars on all sides. Taida shook the healer's hand and said that he was in Red's debt. Valerie also apologized to Riggs, saying that it hadn't been very convenient. Tix turned and waved at Red, offering to grab a drink sometime in the next few days. Reda smiled and said he would try to make time. They said goodbye. Reda exhaled heavily, assuming that they were finally completely finished with this matter. But there was still something that was bothering him. How had Munza managed to cast such a powerful spell? Well, he was going to leave the rest to Lord Tide and his court guards now. Afterwards, Red said that they should go to the guild together and take on some interesting task. Mina smiled and agreed with her father. Meanwhile, in the capital, in the main headquarters of the healers, the girl took the document and said that someone joined the Adventurers Guild without joining his guild, but at the same time, sales of healing are at a bargain price. The girl thought for a moment, then suggested that the guild was simply pressuring him and exploiting him. In her opinion, this had happened quite often before. The girl clutched the piece of paper, shouting that Radha Dixon could be waiting for her. She, Amanda Lowe, was going to rescue the boy from this captivity and accept him into her healer guild. But first she has to finish the paperwork, which has accumulated in huge quantities. Someday she will definitely be able to cope with it. When Reda and his daughters went on another trip, he saw his old friend, Eric. Recognizing him, Reda immediately called out to the man. Eric turned around and immediately started smiling. Reda came up to him and said that they hadn't seen each other for about 3 weeks. Eric said that was indeed true. The daughters were surprised to see someone they knew. They remembered Eric poorly, unlike him. The man approached Mina and asked how she was doing. Mina immediately began to smile back, saying that everything was fine with her and Runa. The girl began to ask Eric what he was doing here and now. The man said that they had been tasked with transporting a black dragon. Another man approached them, touched Red on the shoulder, and asked if they were ready. Reda turned to him and then said that they were of course ready and could begin. The boy turned to the dragon and cast the spell of release. The body of the black dragon lay before them. Several of its fangs were knocked out and lay nearby, and a fatal wound was visible in the middle of its head. Tix, when he saw the monster's carcass, immediately began to rejoice. He said that he had not seen a dragon of this size for 10 years. The Amurt family was also shocked. A certain man in a cassock began to approach the dragon's body to collect it. It was a special A-rank government collector, and they used their magic for such purposes. The dragon began to be sucked into the mage's hands, and soon there was nothing left of it. The man shook his hands and said that the absorption was complete. Rita smiled and said that they were relying on them. The same man who had announced the start earlier came up to the boys and apologized to Mr. Klaus. He said that first they had to determine the price and then they could sell the goods. Klaus replied that it was a normal thing for him. He was planning to put it up for auction in the capital anyway. There they would be able to sell it for a higher price, as the young man thought. Afterwards, he said that it would even be more convenient to do so, in a sense. The head of the guild branch smiled and thanked Mr. Klaus for his understanding. Valerie rushed to Mr. Reed, saying that the guy was simply incredible. She hugged the healer and asked if he had really dealt with that dragon. Runa stood nearby and watched everything. She decided to immediately intervene, appearing between Valerie and her father. Runa immediately indignantly asked Valerie what the mistress was doing. Valerie turned to the girl, uncomprehending. Runa immediately said that Valerie should be ashamed to attack a man when there were so many people in front of them. Valerie said sarcastically that as soon as she approached Rita, Runa appeared immediately. They began to hug the healer, and Rita began to urge them to stop doing such nonsense. Mina was one of the first to notice everything and started to laugh on the side. When Rita looked around, he saw himself that everyone was watching them and seeing everything. Runa and Valerie exchanged sharp glances, then smiled at each other, as if they understood the same thought without words. The girls turned to Rita and said that while everyone was watching, he could make his choice publicly. Rita started shouting, saying that the girls get along well with each other. Afterwards, the guy continued to complain about why this was happening at the most inopportune moment. Eric came closer and drew attention to himself with a deliberate cough. He asked if he could speak. Reda turned sharply and said that of course the man could address. Mina also came closer and told the girls that their father was in a difficult and serious situation, which Valerie and Ruta apparently did not notice. Mina called them to move away. Rita was a little embarrassed, then scratched his head and asked what Eric wanted to say. The man said that he had something to tell the healer. Eric told that there was a man from their capital mercantile guild in the carriage. This man had said earlier that he had business with Red. The healer looked at Eric intently and thought. Eric added that this person was from the Healers Guild, which Reda had not yet joined. Reda thought again, guessing what goals this person might have. Mina heard part of the dialogue and asked Valerie about the Healers Guild. The lady replied that such a guild really does exist, and healers from different parts of the world gather there. The guild man didn't keep everyone waiting long. The girl appeared in the people's field of vision and announced that Reda had to leave the adventurers' guilds and join them. After that, he could sell his services at a high price. Mina asked her father in frustration if he was really going to leave the Adventurers Guild. Reda said that he was not going to do that. The girl from the Healers Guild came closer and said that Reda was behaving inappropriately. The Healers Guild's envoy was standing in front of him, and the guy seemed to have decided to send her far away. Reda laughed, saying that the girl had quite a powerful escort this time. She replied that this was indeed the case, since there had been an increase in robbery attacks here recently. Eric added that he had not limited himself and hired people from the capital's commercial guild so that their journey would go smoothly. Reda replied that he understood everything. Eric also said that he received another business proposal in Amurt, so he does not plan to return to the capital for now. If Red needs something, he can safely contact him. Red smiled and thanked his comrade. Then, they started walking back. Runa and Mina walked ahead. Klaus listened to the healer's stories about Red's daughters. Reda started asking what Klaus was going to do until the auction was over. Klaus thought about it and then said that he would just live in Amurt for now. Reda was surprised. Klaus said that he even liked the city for some reason, and besides, Edith and Kate were supposed to arrive here in a few days. Then he leaned a little closer to Reda and whispered that Hildegard was also going to visit this city. Reda could not believe such a coincidence. Klaus thought about it, remembering that very squabble between the girls. He understood that Reda would have to make a difficult and important choice, Rune or Valerie. Klaus added that he sensed something interesting. Reda didn't quite understand that Klaus was about to go on his way. He waved his hand to the healer and wished him luck. Reda did the same. Now the healer thought about how bad things were for him. He didn't understand if it was all true. He thought that soon for elves it would be 20 or at least 10 years. And now Valerie and Runa were involved. Everything was too confusing and that was bad. Reda had to figure it all out somehow. While he was standing there thinking about all this, he suddenly heard Runa's voice. The girl was asking if Klaus had left yet. Reda turned around and answered that the elf had left them. Reda understood very well that if Hildy and Runa met each other, he had a very bad feeling about it. It would definitely not end peacefully. Mina saw very well that something was wrong with her father. She approached him and asked what was wrong. The girl noticed that Red was sweating all over. The healer replied that he was fine. The guy threw his head back and said that he was actually fine. Mina looked at him in surprise, and Reda actually stopped thinking about everything. Then the case developed in the hospital, Nexon. Inside the building it was restless and there were screams that were trying to confirm something. It was the Amur healer, Nexon Flo himself. The young man complained that because of this guy, all their activities were in the city during the day. He had not had a single patient for a month. The girl who followed behind kept writing something down. She added that they only had 2 healers in this city. Now she was interested in what Yuli Temperance had said. Nexon shook his head and then began to quote Yuli. The second healer complained that he had nothing to do and nowhere to apply magic. Mr. Flo noticed that his face was dull. Nexon also added that Yuli was actually a bit strange. He was happy just because he could somehow use his magic. For him, it was like the meaning of life. Afterwards, Nexon took something out of his pocket and handed it to the girl, asking her to look at it. It was the price list for the treatment, published by the Adventurers Guild. The girl grabbed the paper. When she saw the amounts offered in exchange for services, she became nervous and shouted that it was too cheap for their trade. She started tapping the paper, saying that the healer only takes 5 silver coins, which, for a second, is the same as the cost of the most common potion. The girl sighed and collected her emotions. Suddenly she said that she, Amanda Lowe, would solve this problem and force the guilds to reconsider the price for the provision of services. Then she clenched her fist and added that she would open Red Dixon's eyes and save him from the captivity of the adventurers. And then she was going to force him to join their glorious Healers Guild. The next day, there was an important meeting at the Adventurers Guild. There were several representatives who were about to move on to the next issue. The girl announced that Muzna's organization had been closed and a place had become available in the city. The girl said that she was thinking about building a hospital in the city. Tix asked if any calculations had been made yet on the construction costs. The girl turned to the man and said that she had a few points to make about that. Eric said that their commercial guild, as well as Mr. Amurt himself, would provide all possible support in building the hospital. Tix smiled and said that it turned out that everything had already been settled. Amanda swung the doors open and walked in. She said that nothing had been settled yet and that everyone should listen to her first. Amanda held out her hand and let everyone know that she had heard rumors about this meeting. Now she wanted to know which of those present was Reda Dixon. Tix yawned and said that he was not present. The girl with the small hat on her head turned around and asked who the girl was who had burst in on them like that. She also apologized and said that there was a meeting going on right now, just like the stranger had said. This meant that outsiders were strictly prohibited from entering. The girl replied that her name was Amanda Lowe and that she was a representative of the Healers Guild. One of the meeting participants turned to Amanda and asked what business her guild had with them. Amanda said loudly that she, as a representative of the Healers Guild, opposed the hospital development. Tix said that the girl must have already discussed it with the owner. Amanda replied that it was, and then reminded that there were already 2 healers from their guild in this city. Amanda can't let them just turn a blind eye to them. She also can't let a man named Reda Dixon get away with being exploited against his will. Millet bowed her head and said that her family and this whole town owed Reda a debt. She didn't understand how exploitation came into it. The girl blamed Amanda for having such thoughts. Amanda said that considering that his services were sold for the price of a common potion, it was nothing but exploitation. Millet replied that Red was an adventurer, so all this was done at his request. This even included expenses and rewards. Amanda continued to insist on her own, saying that it was because the Reds knew nothing about the Healers Guild. Millet said that the guild just wanted to make more money, so they sold their services at exorbitant prices. Then she asked what else they needed to know about Amanda's representation. Amanda said that if she wanted, Rita Jane would not be able to call herself a healer. Millet replied that they did not care at all, because the guy healed people, not because he simply had such a rank. Millet and Amanda were about to butt heads. Suddenly, one of the men interrupted them and asked Millet to calm down. The girl immediately adjusted her glasses and apologized to Rang. Afterwards, Mr. Rank looked at the representative of the Healers Guild and called her name. The man said that he would like to ask the girl to leave this room. Amanda shouted that they were not finished yet. Ring said that they were having a meeting now, which only concerned the residents of this city. Amanda had no right to even attend it. Amanda was surprised. Ring said once again that the girl had no right to be here. He added that if she wanted to discuss her issue, she should contact the owner of these lands directly. Amanda snorted, then said loudly that that was what she was going to do. Then the girl headed towards the exit and slammed it loudly. Millet couldn't come to her senses for a long time after such an emotional conversation. Meanwhile, an important conversation was also taking place in Red's house. Runa was asking about a certain organization called Scarlet Topaz. After Runa didn't understand why Rita was interested in this, Rita replied that he just thought he should at least know the name, just in case. Runa was surprised at first, but then she smiled and said that her father was very kind to them. She thanked him, saying thank you for worrying about Mina and Runa herself. Runa came closer and said that as a token of gratitude she could kiss Red if he wanted. Then the girl added that she was going to do it right on the lips. Rita started laughing, telling Runa not to make fun of him. The girl screamed that she was actually serious. Runa started getting angry when suddenly he heard a scream from below calling his name. It was Amanda. The girl stood at the threshold, her hands clasped together. When Red came down to her, the girl said that she was ready to get down to business right away. The girl asked if he was really Reda Dixon, and then abruptly told him that he should leave the Adventurers Guild and join their Healers Guild. Rita smiled and said that he refused. Amanda grabbed her head and asked why Rita refused. The owner of the hotel and the children looked out from around the corner. Amanda added that the whole city was using Rita for their own purposes. The girl continued to say that they were simply exploiting him, including the guild that Rita was currently a member of. Rita looked down and scratched his head. He said it was no wonder Amanda thought that. He said their services were only available to aristocrats and wealthy merchants. Red himself wants to use his healing skills to simply help ordinary people and adventurers. After all, they need help much more often. Red turned around and said he had nothing more to say to the girl. He asked Amanda not to bother him about it anymore. Amanda shouted that she was only there for Reda Dixon. Runa came up behind the healer and hit her with her hand. The girl fell, and Runa quietly said that she had just interrupted a flirtation with Daddy, and besides, this lady was screaming at the top of her lungs. Reda turned and said his daughter's name in shock. Runa grabbed the body by its clothes and began to carry it out of the house. At this time, when Runa was just cleaning up the annoying girl, Tix appeared on the threshold. The man grabbed his head, realizing that he was late. Tix even decided to skip the meeting. Runa turned to the man and said that Amanda was alive. Afterwards, Red's eldest daughter asked him to do them a favor, take Amanda and dump her somewhere. Mina saw that her sister had been too cruel. She understood that this could not end well and would definitely have a sequel. Amanda came to her senses and headed to the tavern, where she could think and have a bite to eat. The girl grabbed her head and screamed that she couldn't believe it. It all seemed like a lie to her. Who would have thought that Red Dixon would not even listen to her, and even more so, would use force to throw her out of the house? The girl said that he acted like a typical barbarian adventurer. Then she threw back a mug of some drink and set it down loudly on the table. Amanda stood up and shouted that if Red didn't want it the easy way, she would get him banned from calling himself a healer. Amanda wiped away her tears and said that she would return to the capital as soon as possible. According to her information, the next carriage was to leave tomorrow, so she would make it in time. In the evening, Reda and Taida were sitting at the table and talking. The healer was telling his friend about what had happened that afternoon. Taida began to laugh loudly. Taida said that Reda was clearly unlucky. Reda himself began to laugh in response, saying that he just wanted everyone to leave him alone and not bother him, at least for a while. Taida began to explain that as a whole guild of healers, they have a certain set of principles. It will be quite difficult to deal with them because they have a good influence. In terms of profit, there is no difference. You can heal only once every few days at a high price, or every day at a low price. The result is the same. Valerie sat down next to him and said that, nevertheless, the services of a local healer cost them much less than those of the capital. She looked straight into Reda's eyes. Runa never missed these moments and immediately appeared between them. The girl said that no matter what and in which guild their daddy was, one thing remains unchanged. Runa is his wife. Valerie smiled and told Rune that the girl must have been mistaken. She probably wanted to say that she was his daughter. Runa smiled broadly in response and asked Mrs. Valerie not to worry about her. For their father, Valerie is also a very important friend, but nothing more. The girls began to laugh sarcastically, looking at each other. Their rivalry continued, and no one missed an opportunity to put a spoke in the wheel. The boy who was playing with Mina smiled and said that her older sister and Mrs. Valerie got along very well. Mina laughed, confirming this. Taida realized that the girls had distracted them. It was time to continue their conversation. Taida also wanted to tell about what happened next with Munza. Taida said that they managed to find out about the source of the curse that sent Valerie into a coma. It comes from a certain organization called Scarlet Topaz. Reda and Runa were very shocked when they heard this name. They had only just talked about it recently. Seeing their reaction, which was definitely not indifferent, Valerie suddenly assumed that Runa knew something about this. Runa stood and clenched her hands into fists. Runa said that it was true. Then she began to tell Taida and Valerie everything she knew about this organization. Taida listened to her and said that now everything was clear to him. Now he planned to pass this information to the guilds and enlist the help of all the adventurers in the kingdom. He asked Runa and Red what they thought about this. Reda thought for a moment, then said that he thought it was a good idea. He turned to Runa and asked if his daughter confirmed his assumption. Runa agreed. Runa added that most likely this organization has several different hideouts. She can only tell about one, which she had previously visited herself. Taida thanked the girl, and then they gradually began to get ready. A carriage was already waiting for them at the exit. Everyone went out to say goodbye, and Taida immediately thanked Riggs for his hospitality once again. Riggs smiled and said that they could always come to them with their sister. The owner of the inn was always ready to serve everything in the best possible way. Tita replied that he would definitely take advantage of this offer. Valerie thought for a moment and then called Mina and Runa to her. Runa was displeased, asking what she wanted from them. Valerie didn't waste much time explaining and simply hugged the girls as soon as they approached. The lady smiled, and Runa was clearly surprised by such kindness. Valerie squeezed the girls for quite a while, laughing shyly. This caught the attention of Taida and Red, who smiled in response to such a display of affection. As soon as Valerie released the girls, Runa immediately tried to catch her breath. She raised her head and asked why Valerie was acting like that. Valerie came closer and told Runa not to worry. They were going to make sure to pay back the Scarlet Topaz Society for everything they had done. A joyful Runa loudly said that only today there was a special offer. She allowed Valerie to hug her father as much as she wanted. Valerie immediately ran to Red, saying that she was very happy. Red turned to the girl in surprise, shocked by such words. Afterwards, Rina leaned over to Mina and Milan, telling them that they could join in and go hug Red. The girls all ran together, screaming that they wanted to hug too. Meanwhile, the elf was riding in her carriage. She apologized for having to make such a big detour and changed the general plans a little because of her. The second girl, also an elf, said that she didn't see anything wrong with it. She said that the healing herbs they were looking for only grew in the designated place. They both turned to look at the boy sleeping inside. The girl holding the reins said that he was sleeping very soundly and added that children were very cute. Hildy leaned forward, saying that someday she too would raise wonderful children with Reda. The second girl was pleasantly surprised by the statement. Hildy added that her companion must have thought that Hildy was like Kat, that a child would think about her child. That could indeed sound suspicious. The second elf laughed again, saying that she hadn't meant to say anything like that. Suddenly they saw something ahead that confused them both. It looked very much like a carriage that had stopped in the middle of the road, a bad sign. Hilda jumped off the carriage and told them to wait there for her. While the other girl remained watching Kat, Hildy walked slowly forward, looking around. She thought that it did not look like anyone was camping here. Several carts had been overturned. Hildy tried to guess what had really happened and why there was such a mess on the road. It was truly a terrible sight. She did not feel anyone's presence, using her senses. Soon she saw the coachman and the guards, who were already dead, and their bodies were pierced by several arrows. When she looked inside one of the wagons, she saw a man and a girl lying almost in an embrace. Hildy thought that they might be robbers. Suddenly she saw a scarf dangling at her feet. There was something drawn on the scarf, a good clue to understand who was the victim of the attack. Now Red was in the capital. He looked into the local adventurers guild. A worker came up and asked him about his success with the search. The guy answered that he had not found the group that the rearguard needed. Someone else overheard their conversation. The man started to come closer and then asked directly if Red was really looking for a group. The guy answered that he was. The girl raised her index finger, asking what Red could do. She also assumed that the guy was a rearguard. Red said that he could also be a collector and use fireballs. The girl began to study the man closely from all sides. One thought for a moment and then added that she could use a good assembler for the team. The girl introduced herself, saying that her name was Jill. She was the leader of a group of black wolves. Jill invited Red to join their team to carry out tasks together. Red asked if Jill was really sure. The guy was genuinely happy, and then he gave his name. Jill was glad to meet him. A couple more people approached them. A tall, muscular man said his name was Gilliam. The girl next to him also introduced herself, calling herself Nikto. Jill suddenly turned her gaze to Red's escort. She pointed at her and said that she didn't look like an adventurer. The girl smiled and said that her name was Linza. Linza hugged Red and said that she had recently started working at this tavern, so Jill was right. She really wasn't an adventurer. Linza asked the guys to take care of Red. After some time, a group of black wolves went on their journey. They put some rewards after another battle, after which Red applied the collection. Red thought they were done at this location. Suddenly, the young man heard Gilliam scream. When he turned around, he saw the big guy leaning against a tree and saying that he had twisted his ankle. Reda came closer and asked permission to examine the wound. He then closed his eyes, prayed, and used his healing skills to grab the man's leg. Nyuki was surprised, saying that Reda was able to learn how to cast healing spells. Reda turned to her and said that he had only mastered these skills a few days ago. Gilliam began to rise to his feet, massaging the area of the injury. He said that it was simply incredible because there were not many people who could use healing. Reda started to smile, saying that nothing of the sort. The guy noted that he was only able to heal minor wounds and bruises. Besides, the pain would return after some time. Gilliam put his hand on Red's shoulder and said that it would be enough anyway. Jill was also noticing that it all worked like a painkiller herb. Jill smiled and said that Red still had a long way to go. If the boy had an aptitude for learning such magic, he would be able to learn something more serious soon. Suddenly, Jill remembered something and said that the guy had better not spread it too much. Red looked at the leader of the group in surprise. Jill smiled broadly again and said that if the Healers Guild found out about the boy's skills, he would have no future in adventuring. These were mutually exclusive things. They all started laughing loudly together. Red scratched his head and said that it was indeed a problem. Mina began to wake her father, telling Reda that it was already morning. Reda remained half asleep, repeating the words that this would indeed be a problem. Mina decided to joke and said that Dad would have problems if he didn't get up. The girl started laughing, and Reda gradually began to open his eyes, realizing that he was just sleeping. Reda sat up and yawned widely. The boy said he had a good dream. Now the boy feels some nostalgia. Mina said that Dad is a real sleepyhead. Mina put her hands on her hips and said that Reda had apparently been drinking again with Tix and the others until the night before. This upset the youngest daughter a little. Reda apologized to the girl and said that he was getting up. Mina ran out of the room and shouted to Rune that Dad was getting up. Reda was going to stop by the guild and check the tasks there. When they were already finishing their walk and leaving the guild, Red and the girls unexpectedly saw Edith and Kate, who were sitting and relaxing in the square. Ket immediately ran forward and took Mina by the hands. The guys shouted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and he really missed her. Reda was happy with such emotions. Edith also approached the boys and told Reda that they really hadn't seen each other for a long time. Runa looked at her father and asked who they were. Reda answered that they were Klaus's family. Edith was Klaus's wife and Ket was their son. Ket kept jumping around Mina. Runa said that she was Mina's sister and Reda's wife at the same time. Suddenly, Reda heard a voice behind him. He knew it. Hildy asked about his wife, not believing her ears. The girl said that it was unexpected. Reda began to get nervous. When they turned around, they saw Hildy. Adela points to Red and says that she is also Red's wife. Mina saw Hildy and happily ran to her, calling me elf sister. Runa began to get indignant, turning to Reda. The eldest daughter said that Hildy was still a small child and, apparently, did not even understand what she was saying. Runa wanted to sort things out between them. Hildy asked again about the person who had just been called a small fry. The girl said that she was actually even older than Edith, who already had children. Runa grabbed her head, showing with all her appearance that she was already tired of pacifying these countless admirers. Afterwards, Runa took a fighting stance and asked if she could punch Hildy in the face. Runa immediately answered herself, saying that it would be wonderful. Hildy's eyes lit up and she said that she considered it the responsibility of adults to teach capricious children a lesson. Hildy stayed where she was, and Runa was already running towards her. Runa added that she was an adult. After that, Reda's eldest daughter began to swing, but her hand was immediately caught by Hildy. Hildy smiled and said that Runa was moving too slowly, then she began to throw Runa over her back, but the girl suddenly disappeared from her grasp. Rune appeared in front of her, also saying that Hildy was moving too slowly. Hildy was not pleased. Having assessed each other, the girls realized that they were in for an interesting fight, and perhaps even an equal one. They began to warm up and Runa said that the winner would be Daddy's wife. People began to watch the fight, forming a crowd around. Someone called the girls little brats, trying to add fuel to the fire. Everyone began to laugh. At one point, Hildy stopped and smiled widely. The elf said that Runa was not a failure at all. She wanted to change tactics, but Runa was not going to give up either. This noise also brought Millet, who began to ask what was going on. Millet shouted, calling on people not to make a row in the Adventurers Guild building. As Millet was saying this, a boot flew at her head. The girl was knocked off her feet and began to fall, dropping all her papers in different directions. She shouted back that you can't just throw things here. Reda decided it was time for him to intervene and started shouting for the girls to stop their squabble. Someone pressed against Reda's side. It was Valerie who said that they could let the girls sort it out. She also suggested that they stand aside and admire. Red was surprised to see Valerie there. The girl explained that they had received a message that a caravan had been attacked near the city. She was there on behalf of her brother. Valerie was getting closer. Hildy and Runa noticed this and turned around indignantly. While Hildy was trying to find out who she was, Runa shouted at Valerie, asking what she was doing here. Runa turned to her sister first, urging Mina to say something already. Hildy also turned and said that Mina could confirm that she was, in fact, Reda's wife. Valerie turned to the girls, who were still arguing among themselves, and said that she would be a great mother to the beautiful Mina. Edith began to be touched by these words. Valerie called Mina, but the youngest daughter did not understand why everyone was demanding something from her. Reda mentally asked Mina not to say anything that could worsen the situation. Mina thought about it, began to show it by twisting her fingers at her temples. Suddenly the girl said that her father helped them all, so Mina herself perfectly understands their feelings. Afterwards, Mina said that if there are so many people who want to become his wife, then she will be glad if she has several mothers and no one will quarrel with each other. Somewhere in the dungeon, far from the capital, several people in black cloaks were holding captive several girls and children from a robbed caravan. Among them was Amanda Lowe. They were handcuffed, and they were deciding what to do with them. They all had shackles on their feet so that no one could escape. One of the men said that including 5 children, they could sell them. One of the men handed the prisoners a crumpled piece of paper with 2 images on it. He asked if anyone had seen these people before. Amanda recognized the girls and said she had seen them before. The healer said they were in the company of one Radha Dixon. The bandit leaned forward, demanding that she repeat it to him. The one sitting on the throne said that everything was clear to him. He added that Scarlet Topaz was currently looking for both Red and those 2 brats. According to the information, Red and the girls were currently in Amurt. The head of Scarlet Topaz turned to Gilliam and asked the man to tell everyone, when the adventurers leave the city, let everyone attack Amurt according to the plan. We need to set out in an hour and take up positions in the area. Gilliam, who had appeared in Red's dreams not long ago, lowered his hood and said that he would carry out the leader's orders. Then Gilliam turned around and walked out. Afterwards, Amanda screamed. The leader asked in surprise what she wanted. Amanda added that she had told everything she knew. Now the girl would like the bandits to let them go. Amanda also said that the Healers Guild would not remain indebted to the men. The leader of the Scarlet Topaz rose to his feet and threw Amanda aside. Amanda began to shake with fear, and the leader of the Topaz began to come closer. The girl did not understand what the bandit wanted to do now. The man in the hood just laughed, asking about the Healers Guild. The man also added that everyone here, including himself, simply couldn't stand this stupid guild. For Amanda, this was a real shock, and she didn't understand the reason. Afterwards, the leader turned his back on her and ordered his men to thoroughly knead the girl, but not to let it all lead to her death. Amanda screamed, asking him to stop. The girl asked for help and then began to scream. The leader walked away, starting to laugh. He thought that he was lucky and all the necessary people gathered in one place. Gil raised his hand, urging Red to wait a little longer. He promised that he would burn this damn city down and make it look despair in the eyes. Gil added that he was not the same as before. Valerie first looked at Reda, then looked away and began to smirk. The girl said that she was glad to meet Hildegard. Valerie also noticed that Klaus was talking about her. Valerie hugged Reda and said that she was Reda's wife. The healer himself, filled with surprise, turned to Valerie and was speechless. Hildy didn't understand what was going on. A group of bandits surveyed the city from a high point on the cliff. Gil said that there were no adventurers in the city and, apparently, they had already gone looking for them. He turned to his men and told them to listen to him very carefully now. The operation would begin from this moment. Gil began to explain the plan they had prepared. He explained that after finding the wagon, these fools most likely headed to an abandoned village in the south. The bandits began to rejoice that the adventurers took their bait. Jill replied that this is exactly what happened. Now they can return to Amurt only by tomorrow because the village itself is far away. Gil added that they, at this time, numbering 150 people, could attack the city and burn it down completely. The city would definitely not cope with such a large detachment without adventurers. In this way, they will be able to recommend their services to neighboring countries and become really rich. This is how they will be able to become not just a gang of bandits, but real mercenaries. Well, and after that, they will be able to become an order of knights in one of the kingdoms. Gil raised his blade and said that they will finally be able to get ahead in life. Gilliam supported the leader, telling everyone to listen. Now was their chance to show the power of the Black Wolves. Gil pointed his sword at the city and said that they could attack. At the Adventurers Guild, at the reception point for minor injuries, Reda was already working. He treated people and they thanked him. With the help of the local healer, many adventurers were able to return to work the next day. Reda smiled and said that he was always happy to help. After saying goodbye to his last patient, the guy said that he was done for the day. Millette came up and praised him for his excellent work. The girl glanced sideways and asked where Mina and everyone else were. Reda replied that the girls were helping out at the Mustache Dwarf today. Afterwards, they would go shopping, showing Hilda the city. Millette recalled the incident that had happened between the girls recently and began to laugh. The girl said that she would hope that the girls would get along with each other. Reda left the guild building and headed towards home. The guy understood that the reconnaissance squad would return tomorrow. They must have a lot of work. The young man was about to come home and go to bed early to get a good rest. Suddenly, a voice was heard behind him. Someone was asking if he was Radha Dixon. Reda turned around and said that it was really him. The girl said that her name was Julius. If the guy suddenly wants to know the full name, then Julius Temperance. She was the healer of this city. Reda felt a little awkward, then asked what the girl had to do with him. Yuli said that Reda, according to rumors, was able to cure Valerie. The girl asked whether it was true or not. Reda did not keep her waiting and immediately answered that the rumors were not lying. For some reason, Yuli immediately bowed her head gloomily. The girl said that she had received a request, but she could not do anything. Then she asked how Reda was able to make all this a reality. Reda replied that he used detect and remove curses. Yuli thought about it, saying that it was just unbelievable. She thought that he came up with such an idea because he was an adventurer. But, with all this, she was also amazed by the healing skills that the guy had. They were at a very good level. Yuli decided to do the following. The girl said she had a favor to ask of Reda if he would allow it. Reda said he would try to help. At the same time, he remembered Amanda and thought he had a bad feeling about this. Yuli spread her arms, which were hidden behind her wide sleeves, and said that she would very much like to become Red's student. The guy was very surprised by such a request. The girl said that she had not had any visitors in this city lately, and she did not like it when she could not use her skills at all. Reda began to wonder what the girl meant. Yuli continued, saying that the guild was planning to build a place for healing rare diseases soon. So, if they work together, the girl will be able to use her magic. Yuli said that she loves to use it, especially healing. She just loves the healing process. Reda thought that the girl was rather strange. Afterwards, Yuli added that she wanted to move to the Adventurers Guild and become Reda's apprentice. Afterwards, she bowed and said that she relied on the teacher. Reda was surprised at how quickly everything was resolved without his participation. The guy apologized and said that he had enough of his own worries. In fact, he had no plans to take anyone as an apprentice. Yuli thought for a bit, then said that she had a rather interesting proposal for Reda, which she could exchange for her training. The girl threw all her clothes aside and said that she could give herself completely for this if her teacher so wished. She was not at all against it. Reda began to calm her down, urging her to stop. He added that this had nothing to do with it and that he did not need such happiness. Reda said that they could simply work as comrades. Yuli turned back and said that she heard her teacher. Then the girl added that she would go to the guild right now. Reda called her to stop. Reda said that he was not very confident in the girl's success, so he was going to go with her. Reda also said that since they were going to work together, he should not be called a teacher anymore. Yuli said that she understood Reda's request. For this, the guy was grateful to her. Yuli also said that she would try to make the guy acknowledge her as his student. Reda added that Yuli had misunderstood him again. While he was trying to explain everything to her normally, two Vaishki rose above the city, which burst in the air and formed a smoky ball. Reda wondered what could have happened. It was an emergency signal, which was really rare to see in a murder. Yuli turned and said that these signals were also visible in the east and south. Reda was a little scared, still thinking about what had happened in the city or its surroundings. Among the girls, Hildy was the first to notice the clapping that was rising above the city. She came out from under the awning of the shop and asked what it was. The girl thought it was some kind of holiday. Mia looked at her older sister and saw the worry on her face. She asked if it was really a signal. The guards in the city had already started evacuating, telling everyone to go to the hotel. The woman behind the counter turned to the girls and said that if their home was far from here, they could stay with her without any problems. Runa winked at the woman and said that they shouldn't worry about them. Everything would be fine. Mina thought about Milan, who was left alone at home, so they had to hurry. Mina ran after her older sister, looking around. She didn't understand, like the others, what was going on. Suddenly, Runa said that she heard the sounds of a battle and, most likely, it was bandits. Hildy turned and asked Runa if the city was always under attack by bandits. Runa closed her eyes and said that it was not. The girls continued to make their way, when suddenly, Hildy, with her sharp sound, caught someone's presence. The girl doubted whether they should go further this way. Runa sighed and said that there were bandits on the left street too. Mina ran closer to her sister and said that then it would be difficult for them to return home. Hildy began to calm the girl down, saying that in that case, they would simply be able to fight their way forward. As soon as they said this, armed men immediately came out in front of them. These were the same bandits who had attacked the city. When they noticed the girls, they immediately began to smile, saying that luck was on their side today. One of the bandits pointed to the three girls and said that they could sell them for a very high price. The second bandit stuck out his tongue and said that they would tie them up and take them away with them. Runa said there was another option she could suggest. The girl said the bandits could just let them go, because their father was waiting at home. The bandit started laughing, saying that this would definitely not happen. He apologized and added that the girls would never meet their father again, after which everyone started laughing again. Hildy stepped forward a little and said that the bandits would be in a lot worse shape than they could possibly imagine. Mina was afraid that Hildy had started to openly threaten the armed men. One of the bandits happily said that the girls themselves go into their hands. Also, the bandits all noted that they liked the girls' ardor. The bandit with the mohawk and the sword in his hands started walking towards the rune, asking the girl if she really wasn't afraid. He extended his hand to her and said that he would now undress the girl and see for himself. The hand that was extended by the bandit suddenly separated from the main body and fell to the ground. Rune used 2 small and sharp blades to teach the boar a lesson. The bandit immediately started shouting, to which the girl answered him immediately. Rune reminded him that they had been warned, but the bandits themselves did not listen to them. Hildy was not far behind. She squeezed several small seeds between her fingers and then commanded them to grow. A bow and arrows formed in the girl's hands. The bandits were very surprised. Hildy started shooting at the offenders, hitting the target right on target. 2 more thugs were neutralized, and now only 1 bandit with a bandaged eye remained. Hildy said menacingly that she had warned the bandits. The surviving man began to run for reinforcements. He was scared and did not understand what these girls were. But he didn't get far. Hildy and Runa each threw a projectile towards the bandit, which caused him to lose his head. Runa caught the dagger, which returned and said that they were nothing but trouble. Then they turned to their little sister and extended their hand. The girls called Mina in one voice to go further. Mina clutched her bag tighter, made a serious face, and agreed. The girls ran ahead and Mina said that she hoped for a better outcome at home. She was really afraid that something might have happened to Dad. Hildy told Mina not to worry. When they turned one of the corners, they realized that they were already near the mustachioed dwarf. There was very little left to the house. Suddenly, a girl ran out of the yard asking for help. Another man ran out after him who was also very scared by the bandits. The marauders chased the unarmed citizens with smiles and laughter on their faces. Runa shouted that these bandits were everywhere. Hildy called her bow and arrows again, saying that Runa should take the left flank. Mina stayed where she was. Hildy started shooting the bandits and told Mina to slowly move forward. As soon as Runa and Hildy deal with the bandits, they will definitely catch up with their sister. Runa turned around and said with a smile on her face that they would handle it pretty quickly. Then she rushed into the crowd of bandits and began to cut them down one by one. Hildy, meanwhile, also shot the couple who came out from the right side. The civilian who was running away from them continued to sit on the ground, scared, clutching his basket. Mina opened the door of the hotel in fear and ran inside. She was very tired and immediately began to scream for her dad and Milan. Before she could finish speaking, the girl saw a terrible picture at home. Several bandits were already sitting inside the house. There was complete chaos everywhere. Furniture was overturned. There was a lot of broken glass and cuts on the walls. Mina dropped her bag and saw Miling tied up. Jill appeared behind the girl and happily said that they had managed to grab the first of the girls. He dropped the leaflet from his hands and reached out to Mina. When the door swung open, Hildy and Runa ran inside the hotel. The girls immediately apologized for being late, but just like Mina, they were horrified by the surprise. Jill sat on a chair and said that they were already tired of waiting for the girls. Behind him, 2 bandits held tied-up little girls, pointing guns at them. Runa and Hilda both shouted their sister's name and were about to move forward. Jill stopped them abruptly, holding his blade forward. He told the girls not to move or they would kill the girls. Jill added that if the girls resisted the magic, they would also suffer. He gave the order to the magician and the girl in the cloak ordered the spell to lull the girls into sleep. After that, a cloud of sleep began to spread throughout the room. Runa and Hildy immediately began to cough, inhaling the fumes of the spell. They slowly began to buckle on their legs. When the girls fell to the floor, the last thing they said was an apology to Reda. After that, their eyes slowly began to close and they could no longer do anything. Gil laughed, telling his subordinates to tie up the girls and carry them away as planned. The task was completed, so the group could leave Amurt. The adventurers also saw the signal for help and hurried back to the city quickly. Along the way, they exchanged information about bandits being spotted in the south and east, as well as at the main gate. They were already approaching the gates, and the girl said that she saw a group of 20 people near the main gate. They all quickened their pace, realizing that they were already a little late. Tix rushed forward. Jillian was just giving orders, demanding that the bandits split up and set the entire city on fire. Tix said that they couldn't allow that to happen, so the boys could take it easy. Gilliam turned around and asked who they were. Tix said that they were not adventurers, but simply guards of this city. The man smiled and continued walking towards the bandits. Gilliam took out his blade and said it didn't make much difference to him. They were just going to finish off the guards right now. The bandits behind him immediately cheered. One of the girls who was in Tix's group recognized Gilliam. She asked the man if it was him. Then she asked him what he was doing there. Gilliam also recognized Aisha. He smiled and asked why Aisha was asking him. The girl screamed that Gilliam had fallen too low and continued to want this, namely to follow Gil. Gilliam said he didn't need a reason to follow Gil, he just did what he wanted and he was fine with it. Aisha was upset, asking what Gilliam was talking about. Gilliam said that in the short time they had, Gil was able to unite the disunited gangs. Everything they have now is entirely due to their leader. Afterwards, Gilliam shouted that together with him they would burn this city down, leaving nothing behind. It would be a great demonstration of the power of the gang that Gil could create. These were black wolves. After Gilliam finished his story, he raised his sword and shouted for the bandits to start. He also said that they would take over the security team. The bandits began to scatter in different directions. Tix also ordered his group to split up. He told Aisha and Elliot to split up and catch up with the other bandits. Tix was going to handle this on his own. Aisha started to litter, saying that it was wrong to do that. She pointed out that Gilliam was an S-rank adventurer. Elliot came over and told Aisha to just trust Tix X. Aisha agreed and then began to turn around. Before finally leaving the place, she called out Gilliam's name and said goodbye to him. The girls ran to catch up with the bandits, and Tix watched them go. Gilliam looked at this hero with a smile and said that he could not do anything alone. Tix sheathed his sword and began to walk up to the shovel stand. The man was making fun of the group of black wolves, saying that they were probably dressed in black to avoid confusion. It seemed funny to him that the bandits could get along in one assembled army. He took a shovel and told the bandits to start attacking and he would check them. The guild building was one of the places where people could hide from the bandits' attack. Reda approached Millet and asked why people were gathering there. The girl told about the bandits' attack. Millet also added that there were quite a few of them, judging by the stories of refugees from the streets. Signals were also coming from different corners of the city. Yuli asked Reda what they would do. The man answered that his family needed him. Reda was going to go back to the hotel to protect the girls. Yuli replied that she understood everything. In that case, the girl was going to stay here and treat the wounded. Millet, dumbfounded, began waving her arms, calling for Julia to stop. She said that the guild would not be able to pay the girl that much. That was what the Healers Guild was paying. Yuli replied that it didn't matter to her at all. She would work just like her teacher Red. She asked the guy for permission, and Millet didn't understand why the girl was calling him a teacher. Reda said that in that case, he would rely on Julia. He waved his hand at them and told the girls to be careful. Millet and Julius watched the healer go. Reda knew he had to hurry. Runa and Hilda should be with Mina now, so he assumed everything would be fine, since the girls could stand up for themselves. Suddenly Red saw a bunch of bandits running out from around the corner. They were chasing the healer. The healer was screaming for someone to help. Reda yelled at the boy to duck. He was amazed that the bandits had filled the city so quickly. He summoned the wind spirit and cast a spell towards the bandits. Afterwards, the boy directed an invisible blade. It was an air magic spell, Wind Cutter. The spell quickly materialized and headed towards the armed marauders. The cutter quickly dealt with all the bandits. Reda exhaled, happy that he managed to focus the spell correctly and not hit the buildings. He ran up to the healer and extended his hand, helping him up. Red asked if the man was hurt. The healer thanked the guy and then suddenly stopped, staring at him. The man pointed his finger at Reda, saying that he recognized him. Reda was surprised by this coincidence. The man touched himself with his hand, after which he added that his name was Nexon. Flo and he is the healer of this city. Afterwards, Nexon said that he wanted to talk about many things with Reda. Reda himself said that now was not the best moment and that they should postpone the conversation until a more opportune time. Reda turned and started running, explaining along the way that he should hurry to the inn. Reda also added that the healer should take refuge somewhere safe. Nexon quickly caught up with Reda and threw himself on his back. He asked the guy to wait. Nexon was very scared, telling Reda not to leave him and if they attacked him again, they would simply kill him. Reda got upset thinking about how he had to hurry. Reda suggested that the guy go with him to the hotel because he was going there anyway now because he was worried about his family. Tix stood in front of the group of bandits and told them they had a choice. He was still armed with a small shovel. Tix said the bandits could lay down their arms and surrender, or they could run away and die. Tix added that there was another option, where the bandits could listen to Gilliam, but in that case they would also die. He stood up confidently and said that the group had a minute to think. Gilliam stepped forward, saying he had a better option. Tix would simply die on his own from his sword. The bandit didn't believe that they could be dealt with by a shovel. Gilliam swung, but Tix was actually able to block the blow with the tool. He said that was exactly what he was going to demonstrate to the group of attackers. As Gilliam failed yet again while attempting to attack, Tix stepped back a bit and then swung his shovel. He cut off the head of the leader of the small group, finishing him off. Gilliam's sword fell to the ground, followed by his headless body. The bandits screamed in horror and then rushed off together to avenge their leader. Tix was quite agile, so he was able to quickly deal with the remaining low-level bandits. He hit the city tiles with his shovel, saying that the shovel would be just right. One of the bandits began to shake, and then said that he remembered. Tix, as it turned out, was an A-rank adventurer and was previously called Demon Tix. The man smiled when he was recognized. The bandit took off running, screaming that they had no chance. Tix picked up his shovel and watched his fleeing target carefully. Afterwards, he smiled broadly and said that the bandit had made a small mistake. He was also called the eccentric Tix X. Afterwards, he threw the shovel at the bandit, which quickly caught up with the target. Tix turned to see another poor guy shaking with fear. When he asked what they were going to do with the last bandit, he dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Tix quickly tied up the marauder, then walked towards the center. Dusting off his hands, Tix said with a smile that he could make another circle to catch someone else. Reda and the healer ran down the street as fast as they could. Flo asked where they were running. It was obvious that he was already tired. Reda pointed forward and said that the hotel they needed was just around the corner. As they got closer, Riggs appeared from the indoors. Nexon immediately said that something was definitely wrong here and Reda quickly agreed with him. Riggs looked around and then surprised Red. He ran towards him saying that something bad had happened. The man immediately told him that Malin was missing. He was in a complete panic. Pointing to the hotel door, the man said that there was no one inside at all and the furniture was overturned. Reda shouted that this couldn't be. When they went inside, they couldn't believe that it was all real. Reda said that it was really terrible, and then, making his way through the hall, someone noticed something. He picked up a piece of paper. Reda saw the girls' faces on the paper, and then squeezed the sheet in his hands. He immediately shouted his daughter's name and turned to the exit. Nixon asked, confused, where Reda was going. Reda said it was obvious. He was going to go find his daughters. Riggs picked up the knife and said he wanted to go with him. Nexon said they would only run into bandits if they went haphazardly. Reda knew that nothing could stop him. He picked up the paper and said that it would be even better this way. Riggs suddenly agreed with the doctor, saying that Nexon was right in his own way. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. It was Valerie. Reda asked the girl what she was doing here. The guy added sharply that it was very dangerous here now. The girl replied that the bandits had seized at least 4 of them and then taken them out of the city in carts. Reda was left in a complete stupor. He asked with a shout in which direction the bandits were heading. Reda couldn't calm down, saying that they simply had to give chase right away. Nexon urged the boy to calm down, saying that Reda would not be able to cope alone. Reda wanted to object and began to turn to the healer. He was not given a chance to say anything by the new people who appeared at the door. They were Klaus and Tix. Klaus said that if Reda continued to break in like this, then only failures awaited him. Valerie turned to Nexon and Riggs, saying that the lady would have a favor to ask of them. Valerie said that while they were rescuing the hostages, all the wounded should be brought here and treated. Valerie looked at the healer and said that he didn't have to worry about paying. Her house would cover every last coin. Nexon held out his hand and said that he didn't have to. The man added that he is a resident of this city, so he simply cannot choose anything in such a situation, much less take money from the victims. Reda turned approvingly, calling the healer by name. Nexon immediately extended his hand forward and said that he would have one condition he wished to voice. Nexon Flo said that if the guild elders find out that he did not take money for treatment, then he will also be removed from his position and have his license revoked. At that time, he hopes for Reda's help in the Adventurers Guild. Reda replied that he could be trusted in this matter. Afterwards, Tix asked if they were finished or not. Klaus and Valerie said that they were ready to move out. Reda objected, saying that the lady could not go there. Valerie smiled and said that if they did that, the boys wouldn't be able to find out the direction the bandits were going. Reda said that she was right about that. Reda wanted to come up with another argument, but Valerie began casting a spell. She called upon a magical object called the Eye of the Raven. The girl explained that this way they would be able to track the bandits. The ring began to shell a group of 3 bandits who were racing on horses, transporting hostages in a cart. Valerie suddenly said that her brother had given her permission to act if Reda was nearby, and now it was time to move. They all had to hurry for the safety of the hostages. They saddled their horses and raced after them. Klaus said that if there were too many of them in the lair, they would definitely need some kind of plan. Luckily, they could watch them from afar. Tix added that it looked like the city had been attacked by only a small group of bandits. They would be able to deal with the bandits themselves, and Red would have to tend to the wounded. Reda immediately replied that he understood everything. The guy spurred his horse, thinking that if only everything would be okay with the girls,